stand for pledging, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence on our fallen servicemen and women. Thank you. Good evening. Next week, the village will be launching a new website that will encourage a more user-friendly interface. A new splash feature will alert residents of any village-related emergencies, and residents can create a free website account in which they can manage email notifications, subscriptions, and do a host of other things. We look forward to this new website. Please note that our next Board of Trustees meeting will be held on February 2nd. There will be only one Board of meeting in February 2023. Governor Hochul recently made comments regarding potential development of building sites located in proximity to commuter railroad stations. Accordingly, I have directed the village administrator, building superintendent, village engineer, and village council to commence the process of identifying village sites that may be impacted by the governor's proposal. This action is intended to create an inventory of village open spaces and will also include zoning, land use, and site area profiles. Let's begin with the agenda. I'd like to call upon the department heads, beginning with Commissioner Jackson. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. I have nothing really on the agenda, just a couple of things. There's been a lot of distraction, larcenies throughout the county. I put a press release out last week. One of the more common ones is when people go to banks and they withdraw money as they go to their car or as they start putting their either money back or their pocketbook in the vehicle. Somebody comes up to them and tells them there's tax or nails or money on the ground by their car. As they're looking, another person's taking the pocketbook or the money pack. It's happened several times in the county, and one of them turned into a robbery when somebody tried to stop it. So we want people to be cognizant of that. Also, some people may have saw on News 12 a film clip of a guy gassing his car at a gas station. That is the second one. The first time was a female victim. She had a pocketbook in it with the fob in the pocketbook. It's very common. You gas your car, you leave the fob or key in the car. What they're doing now is somebody's gassing, they jump in the car. If there's a fob or key in, they take it and they leave. So it's again, so please, if you have a fob, keep it with you. But just be aware of your surroundings. It's happened in numerous locations throughout the county. So I'm just trying to make everybody aware. And in Suffolk County, by Costco, they call Costco from the old days. But at the Costco's, people going up and asking directions. And as they're asking directions, the second person takes stuff out of the car. In fact, the Prince robbery the other day, Prince larceny the other day, as they were asking the Prince driver, they took $300,000 out of the car. So they're very good at distraction. So that seems to be an emerging pattern throughout the county, not just, and also Suffolk in the city. Also, I just want to talk about year-end numbers. They're not fully in, but I got around approximate numbers. Service calls, we had over 19,970 calls. We had 188 arrests. We had 1,599 medical aideds, 1,074 accidents, 170 impounds. We also issued over 20,450 parking tickets and over 11,200 traffic tickets, and we also issued 90 quality of life appearance tickets. That's all I have. Very busy.
That's a nice lead into what I want to mention. The other day was Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. And the Garden City Public Schools sent out a beautiful video, which I sent to the board, thanking the commissioner and his police force, his detectives, and the whole staff for their brave and excellent work. So I want to give you a round of applause.
On behalf of the men and women of the department, thank you.
Who is the person that has 300,000 in their car?
Oh, no, that was a Brinks, that was a Brinks truck.
Oh,
I was just using, I'm sorry, I was just using that as an example of how good they're getting.
Yeah.
So they're unbelievable. And they actually throw the nails and tacks, so you actually see that. So what we're recommending is somebody comes up to you with that, stay in your car, call 911. It's a common thing they're doing, and they're preying on a lot of the people, but the banks, many hopefully.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next is Fire Chief Kern. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, trustees. The fire department has nothing on the formal agenda, however, I would like to provide some numbers as well. In the month of December, the department responded to 108 total alarms, 102 of which were signal aids, 4 general alarms, 1 mutual aid to a surrounding department, and 1 motor vehicle accident. For the year 2022, we responded to 1,184 total alarms, of which 1,052 were signal aids, our lesser alarms, of which we responded to Delphi 141 times. I know Deputy Mayor, you were asking about that. We responded to 631 automatic fire alarms, 132 general alarms, of which 46 were mutual aids to surrounding departments. We responded to 78 motor vehicle accidents, including 10 overturned autos, 6 extrication calls, 5 car fires, and 5 house fires. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I was just curious on all these cars overturned, are they mostly SUVs or?
No, we had a mix of every type of car possible, unfortunately.
Yeah. You know what it's mostly attributed to? I don't remember all these.
It's speeding, it's people trying to beat the lights, rolling through stop signs. Certain streets throughout the village have certain bumps. If you hit a certain speed, unfortunately, you're going to go airborne. Unfortunately, due to the grid layout of the village, T-bone auto accidents happen quite frequently, which then leads to one of them unfortunately overturning.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, one of the items that my grandfather used to say to me, that a mark of a man, the mark of a professional is what they do when nobody's looking. And there is a lot of cooperation with the department, with the police department, and interestingly enough, the village clerk's office was able to secure a grant for the breathing apparatus for the department, and this grant went in 2021. And most doggedly, our village clerk followed up and has secured the grant for $250,000 for equipment for the fire department. So quite candidly, for those of you that do not know, there is a lot that goes behind that nobody seems to know about, but it is very impressive. So, Ms. Altman, thank you.
There you go, Karen.
That check.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'd also just like to thank Karen for all her help with that. It's greatly appreciated. Also along those lines, as the Commissioner brought up, we should have an update on the new engine. The committee has worked very hard behind the scenes, as you brought up. We should be able to, by the next meeting, have the plans finalized to present to the board so everyone can review them, see what we're looking to do in terms of standardization. In regards to the training site that's been discussed for a couple months now, we're actually meeting tomorrow to hopefully finalize the plans and then bring it back and show everybody where we're at. So again, just to reiterate what the Commissioner mentioned, there is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, a lot of interdepartmental cooperation, so thank you to all the department heads as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next is the village treasurer, Irene Wu. Is she on Zoom?
She was on Zoom, yes.
Good evening, Irene. Is she on?
Irene? Irene, are you there? I see you're there. You're unmuted. Irene, are you there?
I'm here.
There you are. Okay, thank you. We had a little glitch here. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, great. Good evening, Mayor, trustees, and everyone there. On tonight's agenda, item number 1 is the annual tax sale. A board resolution is requested to set the annual sale of unpaid village taxes and tax liens on March 17th, 2023. As of today, the amount due is currently $949,400. And typically around that time, the village has about $200,000 of outstanding taxes. So we're still collecting taxes up until that date. Item number 2 is the acceptance of the March 31st, 2022, which represents the 21-22 fiscal year's audit report. As you know, the village engages independent auditor TKF O'Connor Levy to perform the audit of the village's financial statement. Again, this year, the audit report is an unmodified report, which means it's a clean audit. And the results of the audit were shared with the village's finance and audit committee. Item number 3 is the request to appropriate $17,885.72 from the reserve of compensated applicants for 2 employees in the police department who have left the village service. And those are the finance items on the agenda.
Any questions? Questions? Thank you, Irene.
You're welcome.
Next, Police Superintendent Executive Jimmy Moore.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees. The building department doesn't have anything formally on the formal agenda this evening, but I'd also like to let the board know as far as the building department intakes for the prior year, the 12-20-22. The building department is running pretty consistent year after year. We've taken in 1,788 building permit applications with regards to residential and commercial. So the building department is running pretty consistent year after year. And that's all I have. Any questions from the board? Happy to answer. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, how are the renovations going here? Are you happy with them?
Yes, they're moving along. Little noisy for day to day, the operation, but they are moving along. So got some hiccups here and there, but we're on top of it.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay, let's move on. Recreation official Paul Blake, is he on Zoom?
He's on Zoom.
Yes, Mayor, Mr. Callahan.
Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, Mayor, trustees, and residents. Thank you for allowing me to zoom in tonight. Recreation has nothing on the formal agenda this evening. I just want to let everybody know that if you've been driving around town, you've noticed that our tree removal process has begun. Dom's tree service has been in, and they have taken down approximately a third of the total number of trees. And they will be doing another almost 100 trees, and they will be pruning another 88 of the large trees throughout the village. Other than that, I have no numbers at hand, but I can tell you that recreation put an awful lot of smiles on a lot of people's faces this year. And that's my report.
Thank you very much, Paul. Any comments or questions?
Paul, Trustee Kelly here. I wanted to thank you and Sandy Young for the great work you did in putting on the Children's New Year's Eve party. It was a great event, it was well attended, and you handled the unavailability of Cluett Hall very well, so thanks very much.
Trustee Kelly, all of those programs are labors of love for our departments. Mrs. Young and I love doing them, and our staff loves doing them. We were disappointed we couldn't use Cluett, and of course the heat was restored about 3 days later, so that's part of the course. But thank you for those kind words. I will pass them along to our staff, and we look forward to many more programs down the road.
Thank you, Paul. Any other comments? Moving along. Gary Fishberg, Village Council, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. I just wanted to make one comment on item number 15. Ralph, we had talked about retaining the bid deposit. Did you want to include that?
We can add it to the agenda, it's just for clarity.
Yeah, on number 15, this was a bid that's being rescinded because the vendor that was awarded the bid could not meet the insurance requirements. And under the terms of the contract, the bid deposit that they give the village may be retained by the village. So I would suggest that that be included in that item. Also, I have one other item, again, not on the agenda though. This has to do, I think at the last meeting, I mentioned that we were working with both the Historical Society and the New York State Parks Department. The Historical Society has the opportunity to get a $50,000 grant. But the Parks Department has certain requirements that they want the village to meet. Number one, the current license for between the village and the Historical Society actually expires in 2 years. And the license indicates that it could be terminated even before that. The Parks Department has stated that they would want, in order for this grant to be provided, they would want to see a 20-year license. In the past, the Historical Society was on license agreements that lasted 20 years. I think the casino license was similarly renewed recently for 20 years. So I think that's something that the board ought to consider. But there are also a couple of other issues involved, and that is a license agreement by its terms is terminable at will. The Parks Department is not happy with that, and some accommodation has to be made to address that issue, and it could be done in the way of if for some reason the license is terminated, maybe the building, currently under certain circumstances, the building reverts to the village. You'll recall that the building is owned by the Historical Society. The property is owned by the village. But they're in the license agreement under certain circumstances. If the Historical Society goes out of business, the building can revert back to the village. There are other provisions in that license agreement, though, that say that if the Historical Society violates the terms of the license agreement, the village can ask them to remove the building from the site. This is going to run contrary to what the Parks Department wants. So I think maybe if some committee can be appointed to work with me in trying to iron out the language that would be suitable to the Parks Department and suitable for the village. And this is something that probably needs to be done fairly quickly because this grant is hanging out there and the Historical Society doesn't want to possibly lose that grant.
You have the prior agreements?
Pardon?
Do you have copies of the prior agreements?
I have some of the prior agreements. I'm sure Karen Altman has all of them. I have the last couple. There was a license, there was a renewal in, I think, 2009, and then there was another one in 17. There was one in 2007, I think, and there was one in 2009 and 2017. The one in the renewal in 2017, again, was only for 7 years, a maximum of 7 years, with the possibility that it could end sooner. There was also something placed in that agreement that hadn't been in any of the prior license agreements involving the conduct of, or the use of the building for any kind of political activities. That was placed in the agreement by the last time it was renewed. Curiously, there's no similar provision in the casino agreement. That's maybe a bit of a sticky point too.
I don't think the Historical Society is a political group, I think.
No, but there was something placed in the agreement indicating that
They can use the facility to raise funds, right?
right, yeah, but there was something specifically put in the agreement that it would not be used for any political purpose. Again, a similar provision doesn't exist in the casino agreement, and that's something that has to be addressed. The specific language is the society shall not use the site as defined in the 2009 license agreement or any portion thereof for political purposes, including but not limited to political fundraising, rallies, meetings, campaigning, or signage. To the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been any activities like that. Why that was put into the agreement now, at this point, in that last renewal, we don't know, but I know that's something that the Historical Society has questioned.
So what is the time, he says, urgency to get this done?
Well, I've had 2 phone calls. Well, there's urgency on our part. There doesn't seem to be urgency on the part of the state. I've had 2 phone calls with the council, one of the attorneys for the Parks Department. They seem to move very slowly. And I emailed her again and said, we really need another call to try to resolve whatever outstanding issues there are. But I guess the concern is that this is going on a long time, and I know the Historical Society is concerned that the state may start losing interest, and we probably want to act on this.
So can you prepare a draft of the new agreement?
I could, but again, there are, I really need somebody.
After having conversations with the state, obviously.
Well, with the state, and also maybe a couple of board members who, can help resolve a couple of outstanding questions. It's really not my call as to whether you want to continue that prohibition against political activities, and and then the main issue is how we deal with the possibility that the license agreement could be terminated early because there's some disagreement with the Historical Society as to the use of the building.
I'll designate 2 trustees, I'll give you the names next week, and we'll get this thing going, okay? Thank you. Thanks for the follow-up. Anything else, Gary?
No.
Okay, next is Village Administrator Vasquez. How are you this evening?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, trustees. Good evening, members of the public. Mayor, as usual, I have a number of items on the agenda. The first one is the deferred item that was deferred from last agenda. The way this is written isn't really representative of what it was, so let me explain. The village every year conducts a road paving project. When we design or build new, fix our roads, we also have to take into consideration pedestrian rights of way and drainage concerns. And designing these roads, we try to make sure we have accurate measurements for budgeting purposes, to handle designs to the construction crews, and for our records in engineering. The design team noted to us, and I've shared the email correspondence with the board, they noted to us that the repaving of Stewart Avenue specifically, which was brought up during the last budget session, it is on our agenda to do in the next fiscal year starting in June, that the New York State Department of Transportation Highway Design Manual may trigger compliance under New York State law. The minimum lane width in New York State is 10 feet. I believe a compliant lane is 12 feet, and some everything in between. Our entire width across Stewart is about 29.5 feet. They pointed out that wasn't compliant and it might be triggered. We asked them to please double check that and verify that. This is a very significant thing to know. Simultaneously, I ordered a rendering to be produced because part of my job in the executive team is to give the Board of Trustees the information they need to make the business decisions that operate this village. The rendering is produced to discuss because we want to make sure the board knew it was non-compliant, and the aid is being produced is just to aid the discussion. There was no decision before or now contemplating widening the road. It came up as discussion, we were just covering our bases, doing no due diligence. That's the deferred item. Item number 5 on the agenda. The Village of Garden City has deferred comp plan. It is funded by the employees. It has no village taxpayer money in it. They fund their own deferred comp plan, but nonetheless, it is subject to an RFP process under New York State law. An RFP was done. Nationwide was chosen. Tonight on the agenda is for the board to approve the final nationwide MOU. I just want to note that There was a decrease in the amount of fees charged for record keeping, which is a positive, but again, it does not impact the village taxes or the taxpayer. Item number 6 on the agenda is board authorization is requested to approve the following change order submitted by Philip Ross Industries, otherwise referred to as PRI. Change order number 2 is a credit. We no longer require the existing well discharge heads to be refurbished. That's a credit amount of $600. Change order number 5 is to replace the existing pneumatic valves with new motorized butterfly valves at a cost of $256,373.75. I can explain that upgrade if anyone has a question upon it. Item number 7, Village Hall, first floor renovations. The board is being asked to approve following change orders. Change order number 1 is for the addition of fire stopping at approximately 20 locations at a cost of $4,000. Change order number 2 is a credit of $1,750. There was one of the walls in one of the offices was going to be modified, and that credit was that amount was going to be $1,750. When they approached the wall, they realized it was not being supported. It was actually moving. They had to take it down. So we're giving a credit of $1,750 for not making those changes, and there's a new charge of $3,250 to put up a new, properly positioned wall. The overall net cost is $1,500 increase. There's also a credit of $4,500 related to elimination of the plywood floor that's no longer needed. That did not appear on the agenda. I'd like to make sure that gets added into the minutes, and the board is aware of the voting on that as well. Number 8, Village Hall HVAC system. Authorization is requested to approve the following change orders submitted by Intricate Tech Solutions. Change order number 3 for the addition of 1 Honeywell True Fresh system. That is the air exchange for the fresh air that the system requires. This is a result of the design, the paper design for the work that we did out. Had the fresh air coming from the one side of the building and going across to the south side, but there is a solid beam in the lobby area that can't be gone through, so we're putting another air exchange on this side for the board on this side of the office. There's also change order number 9 for nighttime work for all drilling at a cost of $17,767.50. I've noted this in an email to the board that some of the drilling work is quite intrusive now that penetrate 6 or 8 inches of concrete, and it's disturbing for the Village Hall staff because it feels like construction zones are moving the heavy drilling to weekends and evenings. Number 9, water main improvements in Meadow Street, Grove Street, Commander Avenue, and Lindbergh Street. The request is to approve the change order for 1 and 2 in the amounts of $7,383.54 and $39,070 respectively for the water main project, the Meadow Street project. Item number 10, St. Paul's Building Cleanup Service, Island-wide Building Services. Board authorization is requested to approve the proposal submitted by Island-wide Building Services to clean the interior of St. Paul's building at a cost of $48,600. This is just the first and second floor. I want to please note that Island-wide Building Services are the very folks who clean Village Hall and the library. This is a competitively bid contract. When we bid it out, we also had alternatives like special conditions for cleaning trucks and vehicles for COVID. So we don't use all aspects of the contract, but we did go out to them for a proposal on this, and this is another thing we came back with. And this includes, hazmat removal. Item number 11, engagement of professional services for the Meadow Street drainage improvement. Asking the board to engage L.K. McLean Associates for engineering services associated with Meadow Street drainage improvements. It's been talked about publicly before. The Meadow Street area holds a lot of water on the surface, which is making its way into people's homes. It's evidently an ongoing problem for many years, although it surfaced after a storm last August, 2 August ago. This money is for LKMA to build the design specification that needs to go out to bid, to work on the easements with homeowners, to work with the county and incorporate village of Hempstead for any permits that are required. Number 12, we're just renewing the professional rate services for Atlantic Wells, mechanical well contractor for all pump calls for wells, inclusive pump calls for 2016. 2023. Item number 13 is an award of the DPW yard garage door replacements, trustee D, and this is always of interest to you, especially because this is another $418,000 of that outstanding unused capital. Bringing it down, that brings us under 13 million, I believe now. The original budget for this, was $522,500, so this is $104,000 below the estimate that was prepared. Item number 14 is the Second Street manhole renovation. There was a manhole opposite the 2S parking field on Second Street, which collapsed many months ago with the emergency repair to sustain the sewage flow, which is a great volume and great force. This is a permanent reconstruction of that manhole. That price was $322,540. It was bid. And finally, number 15 is the mixed broken asphalt rubbish removal. The board authorization is requested to rescind the bid award to Expedite Trucking and Container Services as they were unable to meet the insurance requirements. Board authorization is also requested to rebid this project. And as noted by Council Fitchburg, we will be retaining the deposit that was made. That is everything I have. I'm willing to take any questions from anybody.
Thank you, Ralph. Any questions, comments?
I just have a comment. Today, well, first of all, on the St. Paul's building, it was brought to our attention, Westerman wrote a note, I guess, to Giuseppe, that before they would go in the St. Paul's building, they wanted it cleaned up. So that brought up a lot of attention to the board and people, Larry, Bruce, and our attorney as well, all weighed in, and I thought I'd just give my comments and thoughts. So I strongly recommend that we approve it tonight, because, you know, cleaning and securing the first 2 floors for Westman so they can get started, and then for their evaluation. And then what we can do is, in parallel, we as a board, we can look at liability issues and the hazardous conditions of the building to see if we have to take additional action. So this way, we're two-phase, we get them started so that we can get moving on this. And then in parallel, we can look at all the different things that came up as far as any other possible hazardous, dangerous conditions. Right now, our police department, I sent it to the board, but you may not have all been able to read it. But the police department is not able to go into the building. They're not authorized to go in. And the fire department has, although they have the equipment to go in, which the police don't, they would have to assess the situation before going in, but they do have the equipment to go in. So I just think for the safety of Westerman and, you know, getting things started, and also our police and fire department, that we just approve that, and while in parallel we look at the other possibilities of action we might have to take. So that's it, that's my comment.
Ralph, 2 questions. First one, Country Life Press, any updates?
No, sorry. The last update I gave you was Friday. I told you I'd update you weekly, so.
Just wondered if we had anything new.
No, I did talk to Mr. Fasano, though. The conversation's been the same. He doesn't have any updates from the design team. He has said to me that the request the village has made will result in us spending less money, like eliminating the plaza and bus shelter. So that's a good thing. And I said, well, we'd like to take some of those unused funds and do better landscaping. The question you're waiting on, I think, is why you keep asking me for updates, is the ramp that was depicted in those drawings. What he said he was going to do, and I have talked to the MTA about this, and to Mr. Fasano and Mr. Garcia, they are going to look at the original ramp that's there to see if it can be modified to be compliant, so they don't have to build a new one. So that's what I think the change we're hoping for on that.
All right, second question, the software change we were looking to do to facilitate the parking passes. We were talking about making it so we have like the midweek, you know, off-peak parking. I know we allocated some funds to actually do the work. Do we have any schedule on when that's being completed by the software company?
I was going to ask Irene to.
Now, let me respond to that. Prior to the board acting on the resolution, I don't believe that there was sufficient information as to what the cost would be for the modification to the computer program. It turns out to be $4,000. We don't know, meaning the village, how many people are going to do that. If you have 10 people need a permit, that means that we are now gonna have a $400 permit per person. What I would like to do is actually talk to the police department and the village clerk to make this a no-fee permit, but with a limited number of utility, similar to the circumstance where if you want to park your car on the street, you send an email to the police department and they know. So if the police department goes in there and sees that the permit sticker on the car is a different color, they will then know to track the utility of that. And if a particular person or persons want to use it for X number of occasions, they have it for free. I am loath to spend $4,000 for the utility of a few uses. I would just as soon prefer that if the circumstance was that if you're going to park the car at the lot, for instance, after 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, that you as a resident understand that you have to communicate to the village that you're going to do it, and you have a finite number of times. Otherwise, you have to park. Otherwise, you have to get a parking permit like everybody else does.
So you would probably do it by the phone, not by the website that we use right now for overnight parking, or?
Right now, it is, no, right now it is by the website with the police department. I know because when I put up my car there, I went down to Village Hall and the officer says, "Why are you here?" And then I found out you can do it by the website. And that would make, that in my mind is a more equitable and financially responsible way of doing it.
So you're suggesting then that through that single website, there'll be a pull down that says, I want parking at the train station option?
Well, they first have to register for the off-peak parking, otherwise we will not be in a position to track it. The police department patrols, and if they see, if the sticker is yellow, they will have a number on the sticker, and they will correspond with the database maintained by the police department, and that's how we get to go track it. That's all.
And then we can do the stickers at no cost, we can put our own stickers on it.
That's it.
Well, just two quick questions. Number 6, it's always frustrating when we have a project, excuse me, that at this point, for Philip Ross Industries is going to be close to $8 million to all of a sudden get, $256,000. Wouldn't this be something that they would have assessed when they started the project, that they needed these particular type of wells?
No, not at all. The original, so this is well 15 and 16. Well, 15 and 16 is down off 2nd Street by Hilton Park. The original project was, this is specifically to the iron treatment plant. The new AOP system, which is the bulk of the $7.8 million, the new AOP systems cannot be used without the iron plant working, and the valves that were in there no longer function. So rather than replace them with mechanical devices, they are upgrading them to new technology, and this is for the valves themselves, which have a 36-month lead time, and for the electrical work to install these things. So the change order is related to the functioning well 15-16. Without this investment, the $7.8 million we spent is useless. We can't use the wells at all.
Okay, and that's something that they just recently assessed. Okay. I also want to commend, I guess, you and Giuseppe, in particular John Baroni. The Main Avenue project seems to be moving along very well, a lot quicker than we had anticipated. So I'd like to commend you for that. Have we heard anything from the MTLIR about the difference of opinion on what needs to be spent on the landscaping?
No information on this.
Yeah, I'm curious because it's been a long time. We had that meeting, what, they were 6-8 months ago here?
I think there's a change in the demand.
There is.
I think the MTA and LIR are shifting some ownership of capital. I did to Mr. Pascal, and he told me he promised numbers to Mr. Stefano of the MTA with the Long Island Road, whichever he is. So I don't think they'd find that out. Otherwise, we'd have the information.
You think it's a positive change?
Yeah, no idea yet.
Yeah, okay,
We have to get involved back in negotiation.
okay,
Turn.
thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
On behalf of the Carter family, who I've known for a long time, Billy Carter asked me to inquire, because one of his dad's passions was the flagpole at St. Paul's, who lives over about St. Paul's. Apparently his dad, who passed away about a year and a half ago, said it's the tallest flagpole in Nassau County, and he's asking why we don't have a flag out.
So, Mr. Blake is on the phone, he can chime in if I get this wrong, but the flagpole that's there now is, I believe, about 90 feet tall. It might be 100, I'm not sure. The pole is damaged and the fire truck can't reach it, and we put in, I believe it's already on order, a new flagpole, which is about 75 feet tall, which would be reachable for future maintenance. So the flagpole is not functioning, and that's why. A number of years ago, believe me, I respect flagpoles. I want a flag on every pole. We try to change all the flags before Memorial Day as well in the village. So we are working on that, but I think there's a back order on the flagpoles. Paul, did I get that pretty close?
Pretty close, Ralph. The flagpole has to be manufactured. They don't stock 75-foot flagpoles. So the last I heard on November 23rd, the material had been delivered to the fabricator. It was going to take a couple of weeks to get the pole made, and then there was a 6 to 7 week delay to get it powder coated, which puts us right around next week to be hearing that it should be on the way. The flagpole for St. Paul's and the new flagpole for Community Park.
That's right,
Both stand and not fixable.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Ralph, quick question on Stewart Avenue and Washington Avenue, all the digging going up on the streets. And then I noticed that on Stewart Avenue today, they started digging on the islands.
There are no quick questions, first of all. So Washington Avenue has a fair amount of utility congestion underneath it. It's one of the reasons why the National Grid gas main had to go down behind Franklin. They were originally supposed to go down Washington, but there's too much congestion there. One of the items, the existing utilities that pass under there are the, I believe it's the Y49 power cable that comes out of Westchester County, across Long Island Sound into Port Washington. It weaves its way down Roslyn Road and down Washington Avenue, comes into our village. It goes down the eastbound lane of Stewart, and it terminates in the power station east of, just south of Roosevelt Field to the east. So that Y49 cable is a power supply. I think it's hydroelectric source. Nonetheless, it had some problems. So there was a lot of work on Roslyn Road for people to traverse that area. I think they are still doing some modifications. This is a NYPA project, New York Power Authority project. I mentioned to the board both an email and publicly we talked about a vault that's being put out over by Coventry. Three-phase project will be done by the spring before we pave Stewart. So they're doing some vault work. It's they're just solidifying that Y49 cable. I think the vaults allow them to, if they have a problem, they can rip out a section and replace it without digging up a whole line again. So I'm not that familiar with the engineering, but that's the work that's going on there. What was the other location? I'm sorry,
It was, well, Stewart Avenue, the islands. They're digging up the islands today, the islands themselves. And one of my questions is
on the east end?
On the east end, yeah.
Yeah, it's
so
probably,
east of Franklin Avenue.
I
Going all the
believe,
way down towards Roosevelt Field.
I am in touch with the NYPA representative. We've exchanged emails and phone calls. If it's down by Coventry Place, it's the vault they're talking about. But I will check tomorrow.
You're one of those by Coventry.
It's the Y49 cable.
And then I'm sure, I mean, they were digging deep. They had big machinery, so I'm wondering if they're going to clean it up for us as well when they finish.
Yeah, listen, we have a lot of utilities on the ground, gas, electric, and we have a good relationship with our utility liaisons, and they do have some protocols they need to follow when it's in the road, like settling. If it's in the dirt, they'll clean it up and fix it for us. You know, this is not something that we are ignorant of, we see it ourselves.
Okay.
But we do, and we stay on top of them. And recently, you might notice, just around the holidays, 11th Street, east of Franklin and west of Arthur Street, there was no stripe in the road. I called them up, and within 10 days, I had that stripe. That was residual from the gas main project, but they did it, you know,
They work well.
they work well with us, and they are, and recently we just had, I believe it was PSCG fixed the sewer collapse at the casino, which was caused by a project related to the trestle being raised, and they routed the electric in front of the casino, and they put a box in close proximity to the sewer main, and it settled and broke it, and we had that resolved yesterday, I believe. So,
How about, is it Altria, the Cablevision, are they cooperating? I saw some of those correspondence.
I really don't-
Sorry, thanks.
Yeah, I'll be generous in my comments. Just for the public, before you ask, and some people might be watching, Altice is doing a regional upgrade in the whole Northeast of their existing coax cable to fiber optic, which will allow much more bandwidth for streaming, which is the demand of the consumers. The upgrade they're doing, they've done on the North Shore. It's everywhere. They're in rights of way, which are on the telephone poles and backyards. Got a call yesterday from Stratford in the utility easement. Basically, we have, and Mr. Fishberg's been very helpful here in speaking to our liaison about this. We have asked them multiple times to inform their residents what they're doing, to give us a blurb so that Ms. Giordano can place it in our different media, including local paper, and to also to contain the conversation that their third-party utility company's making. You know, you ask them a question, you get 10 different answers. So we've asked them to please identify what they're doing. It is fiber optic, which means it's light. I've been told, and I believe it to be the truth, that since it's not antenna-based, there's no radiation, but nonetheless, it's a lot of work, and it serves the neighborhood. So we're hoping for, they did give us a link to a website, but to me it looked more like a marketing piece. I have informed the board about this a few weeks ago. We're still working. I think they can do a better job of communicating. And we have
Because if a resident sees someone unknown in their backyard, it could be alarming.
We originally, Commissioner Jackson and I, this went on years ago with a different utility situation over on Maxwell in the east. Commissioner Jackson and I speak about this, how the police respond. Until we had some assurances and verification with Councilor Fishberg, we told residents to call the police and they'll treat it as a trespass. We've since moved beyond that, but still haven't resolved that issue. We still haven't resolved the communication issue. I do not want to carry their water and put the communication out for them. I want them to write it legally. It's their responsibility, and we can publish it.
Thank you.
Definitely is.
May
The
I-
resident,
May I add something? So, what Cablevision does, where they're installing this fiber optic cable is in rights of way, public rights of way, which they're permitted to do. And they're also installing in backyard easement areas where other utilities have easements. The phone company, the lighting company have easements. And Cablevision, for the most part, has pole attachment agreements. They have agreements where they can use those easements as well. And by the way, in some, I don't think it's in the Garden City agreement, but in some agreements with other municipalities, the municipalities specify that if you're going to put cable, in behind homes or whatever, it must be in that easement area. The big problem has been that Altice has been very negligent in not informing residents, putting door hangers on their doors, or informing them that they're going to be working there. So these residents come home, they either have somebody digging in the right-of-way alongside their house, or in their backyards on the pole lines, and they're frightened, annoyed, whatever by that. So I know I and Ralph both have had several conversations with the Cablevision rep about having to improve this situation. And I actually wrote an email to the Cablevision rep yesterday saying, if they don't improve it, if they don't improve the situation, the village will have to consider some local law or resolution that will require that there be so much notice given to a homeowner, and penalties if they don't subscribe to that. So that's how it was left as of yesterday. I said I wrote that email to Cablevision. So
I want to just comment two other things. I wrote an email yesterday to our liaison saying, if you don't improve your communication, we may, if I was trying, not being a lawyer, I said we may end up in court over this. I might take other options that I haven't taken so far. The other thing is, they're laying out the road, they're laying out the highway, and then they're putting junction boxes on these poles. So let's say they put the fiber optic cable in the backyard, and customer one wants it, then they run a wire from the junction box, which is attached to that highway, into the home. So that's how, so they're not necessarily attaching people's homes. This is an investment they're making because this is the way that the industry's trending, and they're getting prepared for that investment now. But it's going on from, I'm saying from, I don't know how far the territory north goes, but as far as Massachusetts down to wherever they
So
say.
they want to put a junction box for every home?
No, I'm not sure, I believe, but it's like a splitter, I guess it takes it off. I don't know how close they are, but I would assume there's quite a few of them, but they're just ways to slice the main cable into the home.
Ralph and Gary, thanks for addressing it.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Any other comments?
I heard from my good friend of mine's door about 10 o'clock on Tuesday night, so thank you guys for
I saw that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, with regard to the individual that Mr. Spalzi was talking about, he did respond to me in my emails to him. And he said, well, what should we do? And I did specifically say, just what we're supposed to do. Who, what, why, when, and how is the information that you need to convey to all of the residents. And if you're providing a service, and your name is Altice or Cablevision, I see you every day. You can just broadcast that, what you are doing and how you are trying to do it. For those of us that don't know it, right behind the Supreme Court building, they are staging like the Normandy invasion with all their rolls of wires and trucks. So they're going to be here for a while. But there has been a number of communications to them, and I believe they do have, well, they definitely have the right to do it. They now know that they're going to have to be better neighbors.
This shortcoming is not unique to Garden City. Understand that? I live on the North Shore. You wake up one day and there's a gigantic spool of wire on a block. You go 4 block right. No. You go, then you go another one. And then you see 3 trucks stringing this like spaghetti. And then a week later you see one lone person out there splicing the cable. It's ridiculous. I have no communication at all. It's like,
Kind of like work on the Bell Park.
All right, let's keep going. Thanks very much for the comments. We'll open it up now to agenda items. Are there any citizen comments on agenda items? Please come up to the podium, state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. My name is Albert D'Agostino. I reside at 409 Stewart Avenue, and with regards to the trustees' inquiry as to the utility trucks that we're digging today, I live on the north side. They were actually working to reconnect my gas line. That's to give you a location. I'm between Westbury and Wetherell. I'm up here to speak primarily on item 1, and I appreciate Mr. Swazi's explanation, and I understand it. The reference to a widening to increase the overall roadway with from 30 to 35 feet on the eastbound and westbound travel lanes, which, easy math, that's 10 feet. got my attention because I've lived on East Stewart for the last 37 years, and there's a great deal of concern, should there be a widening. Once it starts, when will it stop? And today, I guess it's kind of timely based upon what's been in the news, there are more pressures coming from the east, as there always have been. From Roosevelt Field, where there's going to be some additional construction, which the Board of Zoning Appeals in the town of Hempstead recently approved, as well as in Mitchell Field. My primary concern, and this has come up twice since I've lived here, the county had quote-unquote plans regarding the Clinton-Stewart Avenue intersection. The first iteration was an effort to actually move Clinton onto the green area, which is the westernmost boundary of Roosevelt Field, and then they discovered that parkland and the village at that time, and I believe it was either in the late 1980s or early 1990s, refused to cooperate. Then another iteration, and I think that one may have involved the flyover being a raised road which was going to somehow go over Stewart, and it would have been a visual nightmare. And I'm not going to repeat the comments that Brian Pinola, who was the former president of the Historical Society, made at the last meeting relative to the design and attention that was paid to the planning of that right-of-way, which the only other ones that I can think of is perhaps Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn, the Grand Concourse in the Bronx, and the Champs-Élysées in Paris. That was the reason that it was set up that way. It was a gateway to the village. So the second iteration of the county's effort to quote-unquote improve the Clinton-Stewart intersection involved cutting into green space, and I spent a great deal of time. I foiled some documentation from the village and what appears to be the front lawn of Bosse's and the green area across the street, which is just to the north of the never-used railroad station other than for the troops in the First World War, appear on maps, file maps, as parks, parkland. And at that time, there was a great deal of uproar from the residents in the east, and the county reversed the position. So it's a rather long-winded explanation. When I see widening, my question is this the first step? Is county DPW back to a new design? People retire, move on, they don't know the history, and that's the reason I'm down here tonight. But I understand the explanation, and but I would just ask that should there be any request or suggestion from the county that, and I'm sure this board would in a very transparent manner, let the residents, especially the residents of the east and that residential area on both sides of Stewart, know. The second point, which is unrelated to that, but Mr. Fishberg and I had a brief conversation. At the time that the last iteration of the quote-unquote license agreement between the village and the Historical Society was entered into, I was asked to represent the Historical Society, and I did. And to answer some of the questions as to why it is the way it is, the then board, one particular member of that board, who I won't mention, but you all know, was adamant. And it was basically take it or leave it. And that's the reason for that. And I appreciate Mr. Fishberg's comments. I'm not representing the Historical Society at this point, but I believe it is time to try to straighten out the conundrum that was left from the then village board. And that's basically all I have to say. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson.
Can I just respond to some of your comments? One of which is in 1997, when I was on the board, the very issues that you raised on point one with regard to the county's desire to reconfigure were addressed by the board that I was on for many years. And that intersection is really a problem. Whether it is solvable by the county, I don't know. But the item agenda has nothing to do with that. Candidly, when you look at something without the background information, it gives a misimpression as to why it's on the agenda. This is solely on the agenda to pay a bill. That's it. There is no plan on engaging any firm. There's no plan for any construction. It was only part of the due diligence by the village to see what is out there. So what happens is, when this expenditure occurred, the finance department says, while the village administrator has the authority to incur the charge, as an abundance of caution, they requested that it be on the agenda, just to pay a bill. So, to rest assured that nobody that I know of is suggesting that any plans or any funds be expended to make any changes to Stewart Avenue.
Thank you.
Bruce. Please come up. State your name and address, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, trustees, Leo Stimler, 67 Huntington Road. Trustee Kelly, as chair of the traffic committee, I'd like to salute your comments at the last meeting regarding Stewart Avenue. And I'd like to call, in case any of you have missed it, on last Saturday's New York Times, there was an article about what happens when you widen, add traffic lanes. You make traffic worse, you make carbon dioxide worse, so greenhouse emissions. It's 3 columns, it's above the fold, and it's 2 long, full pages in the back. So that's what they're saying that research shows when you widen a highway. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guerrero, please.
Thank you. First of all, Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year.
You too.
My questions, and not comments, really just questions. And I have about 5 questions. They all relate to the Westerman cleaning. And Mr. Mayor, the last time we were here talking last year, you gave me about 3 questions. I only asked 1, so I'd ask for a little indulgence in the questions that they're all related. Anyway, Westerman cleaning. Has Westerman been engaged, triggering the 70-day, 10-week period for them to issue a report, based on the fact that they have now said the building should be cleaned?
I believe a purchase order was issued, am I correct?
That's correct.
So, did that purchase order, whenever that was, does that trigger the 70 days? That's my question. In other words, I think citizens want to know, well, when can we expect a
I think
report?
if he said he needs an estimated 70 days, that's what he needs.
Okay.
That's part of his proposal.
Okay. So, the question I have then is, what did he indicate to the board and to the Department of Buildings as to why cleaning needed to be done of the first floors, and what is the definition of cleaning as it applies to those 2 floors?
I think Giuseppe, you can answer this, right?
To answer your question, the Westerman actually indicated the building should be cleaned. He indicated that most of the building should be cleaned, because there's a numerous amount of debris, which is waste, black garbage bags, timber left in the corridor areas, the main dining areas of the building, offices of the building, classrooms, what have you. He indicated to me he did walk through the building and gave me a verbal comment, just in passing. Mr. Juvenile, I think the building should be cleaned for my people's safety, including myself. So he was in the building prior to making this assumption as far as the building should be cleaned. Just not too long ago, out of another conversation, he sent an email requesting that, it was the building cleaned, or it should be cleaned. His suggestion was the building, I really recommend the building should be clean and some safeguarding the areas. And that's when I forwarded that email to the board.
Okay.
Just to give the board a heads up, as he is requesting this in writing.
Okay, that relates to a question that I didn't think of until you refreshed my memory.
Sure.
I think there's a request for $5,000 for some kind of wood supporting when the cleaning is being done.
That is correct, let me clarify that for you as well.
Can you clarify that for us,
Absolutely. So the request of $5,000 is under my supervision for hopefully, once the building is clean and we can actually enter the building with village staff, I can probably, with my supervision as far as provide some safeguarding and some plywood and 2x4s to assist some kind of railing, because there are numerous areas of the building that the floor and ceilings are collapsed.
Okay.
So this is to safeguard certain areas of the building, which I feel, as a building superintendent, should be done.
Okay, so I assume from what had been said earlier that these workers, this is not gonna be the Merry Maids, this is gonna be.
This is gonna be citywide, which is our state contract that actually cleans this building, is going to subcontract, including themselves, to a company. It's actually a cleanup and contractor that will basically provide containers and take the waste away out of the building.
And I think there have been photographs disseminated in the past that shows some of this debris.
Yes, those photographs were also sent to the board as well.
Okay, probably about my last question, or related question, why only the 2 floors? Why not the whole building?
The 2 floors were my recommendation, because if we do the entire building, it could be endless. So I decided to do the first 2 floors, and then we can explore the rest. There's debris throughout every floor, including the basement, but that number can trigger probably $200,000+ if we're going by discounted whatever the total amount is now, I forgot, but it's $48,600. So I figured we start at 2 floors, bring his people in, make sure they're comfortable and safe with my assistance, and we can go from there.
Okay, that leads me to, I think, more or less my last question. The building has more than 2 floors.
4 floors.
4 floors. If you're a cost estimator and you're gonna evaluate costs, don't you then have to, at some point, also have to go to these upper floors to make some kind of estimation of them as well? And if so, how does that happen and when?
Well, the entire staircase of the building will be cleaned in order to accommodate the vendors to go up and explore the areas. Not all the rooms have this sort of debris that I mentioned, so they are, and Mr. Westland has been up to the 4th floor. So he can access the 4th floor, but we feel that it's very safe to clean the building as depicted here in the proposal.
Okay, so this idea of doing the first 2 floors now does not relate to evaluating uses of the building and costs related to that? Because I know that there was a report by the Committee of Safe St. Paul's back in 2011 that related to uses of the parlors and the chapel on the 1st floor. So these 2 things are not related?
Not related, not related. Oh.
Thank you.
Anyone else? State your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Richard Williams, 411 Stewart Avenue, Garden City. Thank you for the time. I have back to the Stewart Avenue issue. Obviously, I have a vested interest, a very clear vested interest, but when I looked into a little bit of the background, I saw that this thing started back sometime prior to June of last year. This review, if you will, of Stewart Avenue. So it's not a new thing. I didn't know about it until, I guess, the last board meeting. So that raised my concerns. And I looked at some documents, some emails back and forth, and obviously there's some gaps in terms of my understanding, but I see words like, do this before we do Stewart Avenue study. So there were other things being done sometime prior to June of last year. And it seems like, I say seems because I don't know, that the board, or the board before you even, didn't know about some of this happening. Now, I understand that sometimes you have to do research to find out what you can't do, but I do express a serious concern that there was a move afoot to do something, to spend money, because it was authorized properly, and we need to pay for it, I understand that too. But the concern I have is, this thing started at least 7, 8, 9 months ago, or longer, and it was initiation. I don't mean the village administrator's initiation, but did something portend this? Did some, as Mr. D'Agostino talked to, did something address this in a different way that might have brought it forward? The fact that we didn't know about it, we use the word Stewart Avenue, people didn't know about it, is of deep concern. And as expressed prior, I absolutely agree. You know, the Robert Moses thing about when you put a bridge up, they'll come. Well, if you broaden that roadway, they will come, and we don't need them to come any further. As some internal discussions were made, maybe the approach should be just the opposite. We should take a view towards taking 3 lanes down to 2 lanes, and that makes all the sense in the world to me. Okay, I think it's a wonderful idea. But go back to my prime issue. As a citizen, I didn't know, and I don't think anybody in my neighborhood knew that there was this review being done about the concept of even the library. And I understand why the village has to track maybe to the state and all that other good stuff, but the fact that it goes back so far is of deep concern to me. And again, it talks to Mr. D'Agostino's comments. Why does this occur without maybe somebody at the board? Maybe you did know. Maybe somebody did. Okay, so again, to me, it's a public transparency issue first, and that's a deeper concern, whatever that portends. So
I forgot your name, sir. Your name?
Rich Williams.
Mr. Williams. So thank you. So I'll try to clear this up. I'm actually glad I made the comment earlier.
Yes.
And I really appreciate these comments. You have to understand that the village has a road program. When I started back in 2014, the village had cut back along its capital programs. A road in theory lasts somewhere between 15 and 20 years, depending on the type of road it is and how much travel. So based on the number of roads we have, we should be doing a road and then 20 years later doing it, give or take. We take the extra step, we did it 5 years ago, we did it last year again, we asked an outside engineering firm to look at the roads and rate them according to the New York State system, 1 through 10. I believe 1 is the best, John? 1's the worst, 10's the best. So we rate them on, and so we try and move all of our roads toward 10. As soon as you do 10, it becomes 9. So we're in the area now where there's no 1, 2, 3s, or 4s, there's 5s and 6s. So every year we do a road program. We talk about it during the budget session. We ask the board for money based on the calculation, based on competitive prices on linear feet of concrete and asphalt that's seeded, guesstimates on base repair, and then the board passes that budget and we build roads. The people who live in those roads get notified if they have sidewalk repairs. So the rest of the town can see that we're paving Hampton or Russell, but they usually don't care until it's their road. Now Stewart Avenue is 6 lanes, so it's not like the other roads in town which have a couple of lanes. It's 3 times the size. So it's about a $2.5 million expenditure, leaving it as it is. So last June, or last March, I put $250,000 in the capital budget, not for road repair, but just for design, because as I think I alluded to before, Trustee Egan, we had about a $27 million backlog of capital projects. And our engineers, of which there were 2, but now we have 3, if we don't count Mr. Giuseppe's participation as an engineer 4. We were trying to magnify our engineers by assigning sub-engineering teams, third-party engineering teams, which we went out for RFPs on. And one of the engineering firms we chose was LKNA, and we gave them roads to design, not Stewart at the time. But because it's such a big project, we asked that they start looking at the design of the concrete work on Stewart back in around May or June of last year. In fact, we haven't even tapped into that $250,000 yet, except for this $2,500. So around November, the team said, hey, we think there might be a problem with the New York State DOT. They may, because they're looking at this as an alteration, not a maintenance issue, they may force compliance. my antenna goes up. I asked Mr. Brony to ask them to verify, double check that, because if it's true, we might want to abandon it altogether, or we might want to find out what compliance looks like. At that time, I ordered a rendering, because I can't design with words. I'm speaking to a board and the public listening in. I wanted to have images, because a picture is 1,000 words. Right now, one of the lanes is 9.5 feet. That's the size of our parking spaces out here. Very narrow, the other two are 10. What we'll probably do is we'll leave it alone and maybe make them all 9.8 inches, you know, so they're all equal. But the idea came up and I said, let's get prepared for this, for the budget season, because from a fiduciary standpoint, from a logic standpoint, I can't ask the board about it after I spend $2.5 million. So I'd like to say, hey, these lanes are really narrow, it's out of compliance. The state pointed out to us, but we don't have to do it. But as part of the budget process, we want to give the board information to make the right business decision, the right financial decision. That's how this came about. I asked for it to be ratified because I had the money. I authorized the money on December 7th or so. And then purchasing said, you know, this should go to the board. And rather than argue with them, which I have done often, because the description of the spend in the capital project alluded to this, I put it on as a change order, put it out there as a ratification. And it wasn't meant to signal that we're widening. I think the language doesn't do me any favors here, but the goal is to make sure that we make decisions, especially for such a high expenditure, that we inform the board that there is an issue with this road in the eyes of the state, but luckily we don't have to change it. But I'd be amiss if I spent $2.5 million repaving it, and then what if you stood up? What if you stood up and say, why didn't you widen it? It's so narrow. What do I do then? So you can't win either way, but
I appreciate what you said, and certainly I understand the validity of the beginning investigation and looking into the process of spending $2.5 million without authorization would land you someplace, and understood. What strikes me though, and independent of that, is Stewart Avenue is a microcosm of other things in the village to me. It's an iconic view, if you will. You look, you know, at the perfect time of year when you see the trees and they just blanket over, and whether it's spring or fall, it's just magnificent. But it's just one of 6 or 7 other things that are going on, from 6th Street to Maryland Avenue to, you know, just keep going on. And now Mr. D'Agostino raises the casino, you know, and it certainly runs into your head that maybe there's an effort by the county, the state, to say, let's get some more traffic down so we can run really fast into those casinos, and why not do it through Stewart Avenue? So I put it into the category of not one item, but 10 items, you know, that we're all faced with. I think a little bit more transparency about something iconic like that. Paving Meadow Street or something, and I don't mean any bad things about Meadow Street, but it doesn't have, we're gonna dig first, doesn't have the same impact as a Stewart Avenue either side, or Franklin, or maybe a Hilton or Cherry Valley, which have, you know, much heavier traffic, etc. But I just think something of this ilk needs to be communicated early and often, anything of this magnitude to the village, so that we can bring forward your ideas, why you did what you did. It would have been super helpful, and I understand why you didn't, I understand why you do. I just expressed that deep concern that between the Clinton Avenue, overpass, underpass, whatever we're talking about possibly, all the free space we have, all the registration we want to do for this blank space, the governor's comments 2 days ago, they scare the heck out of me as a citizen, about somebody being able to zone you out. You're gone. You know, you don't have to do anything because the state will take over. So I appreciate the comments. Thank you very much for the reassurance. I appreciate the depth of your comments.
We try to be as transparent as we can, but at the end of the day, Stewart Avenue is recognized as a major thoroughfare, and since I got here 9 years ago, they said we should repave this. We're actually biting the bullet and repaving it, and that comment came up November 28th and said, we might have a problem here, let's take a look.
I do have a pothole in front of my house if you'd like to pay. Thank you much.
Stephen Alardi, ironically 139 Meadow Street. First item, number 11, I just hope you support that. I know Ralph's done a lot of work. The residents over on Meadow have done a lot of communication with the village regarding the flooding problem. And this is a good step in getting that project rolling and getting that flooding issue fixed. And then eventually getting our street paved, which started 10 years ago when they did the water main, the gas main. And then they said, well, we're not gonna pave it, we're gonna do the water main. And then got the water main done, and they said, well, we're not gonna pave it, we're gonna do the sewers. And, you know, now they gotta redo sidewalks because the trees have raised the sidewalks that people already paid 10 years ago to replace. So, you know, hopefully, next spring, we'll have that solved and have Meadow paved. The other item, 10, on the cleanup of St. Paul's, I'm sure there's measures in place for protecting the area when they're taking out this rubbish, and they're responsible for dumpsters and removing it off of village grounds?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Hi,
Donald,
by the way. Just next.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't realize we had numbers.
Hi, my name is Diane Kendrick, and I live at 111 Cherry Valley. I have a question and a few comments to make. My first question is, how long will the senior center be closed? I know you probably can't give me a definite date, but I would like to know what's in the works and when we can expect it to be opened again.
Well, I can't give you an actual definite date, because we're still dealing with the insurance company and with the contract that's going back and forth right now. But we are moving forward as far as the rehab of the senior center. There was a few capital projects that are on hold right now because of the unfortunate incident that happened there with the flooding. So right now, we're actually dealing with the insurance company and the contractor to rehab the building at this point.
Will the new floor be put in at that time?
The new floor will be put in right after the rehab. Yes.
Okay, now, the thing is, I have brought up the senior center at a number of board of trustee meetings and been ignored. The senior center has not been kept clean. The heat has not worked. The seniors make up 21% of the village population according to the 2020 census. And to be very honest, we are treated like second-class citizens. Most of us have brought up our children here in town and have been in full support of every program for the children, but there never seems to be a program for the senior citizens. Right now, we have no place to go because all of the country clubs are closed, the casino is closed. We have nowhere to go, and I don't know, we feel like you don't care about us. And I would like to know if you can find it in your heart to put us into the budget somewhere. Give us a little bit of priority on the senior center being fixed. I think it's a disgrace. I really do. We are overlooked constantly. And we have very little voice in what goes on.
I apologize, I thank you for your concern, and we'll be on top of it. Maybe Ralph can share some words as far as another location, but we'll make the furthest to Paul Blake.
Yeah, so
Any comments?
Paul Blake's on the line, I'm gonna let him say a few words. I want you to know that this board and the prior board have been very supportive of the repairs that we budgeted there. And we were executing those repairs when this happened. We were actually putting new floor in, and we have the AC and heat.
The floor has been taped together for the past 2 years.
I understand that we have to.
With duct tape.
I understand that. We had put a project together, we did it out, we awarded it, and then the pipe burst, which really ruined the floor, so.
But that's 2 years later, the pipe burst. 2 years later, and the pipe burst, I believe, on the day that the floor was supposed to be delivered.
It was very close, like within 24 hours, yeah.
So, I mean, when you fix it now, are you gonna just put in a new floor and fix the pipe? Is that it? Is that all we're gonna get?
No, actually, the HVAC system's being done. We are checking the heating system in the building. We are, some of the sprinkler system with this effect, triggered the sprinkler system, so we are going through that. The fire alarm system will be updated and checked and inspected. As far as the capital project was for the flooring to be done, which they were scheduled, actually, probably that day, if not the next day, prior to this incident. So we will, take full responsibility. We'll be there, and we'll take care of it, make sure the project is on the way. But right now, we are dealing with the insurance company and the contractor to rehab the flooring, the sheetrock, the pipe burst with the plumber, the lighting fixtures that fell down into the kitchen area. So there's quite a bit. It actually turned into a nightmare.
I think Mr. Blake should, I think he must make some comments.
Paul, are you there?
I am. The floor has been an issue for the past couple of years. You are absolutely correct. We have changed approximately 150 floor tiles over the past 2 years. And again, we know the problem is the underlayment on the floor, which is why the capital project was entered to replace not just the tiles, but what is underneath the tiles. And Mr. Gianello can speak a little more to that. The new heating system is also coming in. That is something that was planned and is underway now. The engineering company is working on it right now. In terms of other facilities, we are open for business at the senior center at the St. Paul's Cottages. We have 3 rooms open. We are running a wide range of programs over there. Everything from yoga, stretching, aerobics, to card playing, socializing, coming for a cup of coffee. Buildings open every day of the week. That was the best facility available, and it's right on our campus. Our office is right next door. We have staff available to come over and help people in and out of the buildings if they need it, to take them to the activities. We are more than happy to provide activities for our seniors. That is never a question in this department.
We need a little bit of lighting where those cottages are. The lighting is very poor there as soon as it gets
Well, then
dark.
we'll take a look at that. I will bring that to the attention of my maintenance people the first thing tomorrow morning when I get to my office.
I would appreciate it.
Not a
And I
problem.
hope that it can give a little better consideration to the seniors. Not you particularly, Paul, but the board as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thanks, Paul.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Okay. Let's move on. Let's continue with tonight's regular board meeting.
There's a few on Zoom.
Okay.
There's clearly important, I don't understand.
Judy, did you want to speak?
Oh, hi, yeah, thanks, I wanted to go back to the St. Paul's cleaning conversation and just, I may build on Steve's questions a few times, I don't need to repeat, but just a couple of other items. So I believe I understood that what this entails is cleaning of floor 1 and 2 and removing rubbish and other items that, kind of have been sitting there, I guess, for a number of years. So it's not like cleaning the walls and scrubbing walls, or is it? I wasn't clear on that.
To answer your question, Susan, yes, it's cleaning most of the rubbish that are in the way of the hallways and the main rooms. They are going to abate some of the flooring. There is a numerous of work to do as far as abating the floors, but in the main areas, they are going to wash and abate the floors just to make it more safe to walk around. But yes, they are the most, the heavy baggage and lumber that's left in there, that will be carted away.
Who's the subcontractor? I didn't realize it was being subbed out. Who's the subcontractor who's doing this work? And what experience do they have with historical buildings?
I don't have the subcontractor's name handy right now, but it's through our state contract, which also includes this building. It's island-wide building service, and they subcontract it out to a removal company that takes rubbish and debris.
Right, but my assumption is cleaning Village Hall or removing rubbish and debris is very different than working with a St. Paul's building. And I'm assuming that the subcontractor has some experience with, as I said, a historic site.
He does. I've actually met with them and the owner of island-wide at St. Paul's and walked him to the facility, and that he is full aware of what he has to do.
Okay, and then I was a little confused about the cleaning floor 1 and 2 versus 3 and 4. So my understanding is the cost estimator will have to give us an estimate about any renovations for all 4 floors. Your recommendation right now is to clean floors 1 and 2. How will they give us an estimate for floors 3 and 4 if they are not clean? Or they don't need to be clean?
Well, the entire building should be clean, but right, we're gonna start with building 1 and 2, and if once Westman and his crew comes back into the building, we're gonna explore if the other 2 remaining floors need to be done, including the basement. But at this time, I'm just recommending the 1st and 2nd floor, so they can fully access, you know, as far as these 2 floors. Like I said, we don't want it to snowball, we just want them to get in, do what they can to explore the building, and go from there.
But if you only clean floors 1 and 2, they are not able to go to floors 3 and 4 to give us an estimate, correct?
No, they're able to go to 3 and 4, including parts of the basement, but there is outstanding debris in all of the floors, but for right now, we're limiting them to certain areas of the building.
So they will not come back and ask for additional monies to clean out the floors floors 4 through 5, or 3 through 4.
I'm not understanding additional money. Westerman, let's be clear, Westerman is not a cleaning service. The building department is putting in the request, Citywide is doing the cleaning, and if we feel that Citywide needs to go back in and clean the remaining floors, I'll be back to this board to make that request for additional
Why do you
funds.
know that now, is my question.
Say
Why are
again?
you doing this piecemeal?
Like I mentioned earlier, the numbers could really be astronomical as far as the cost to clean the building. So I'm recommending the first two floors of the building at this time.
So I would say as a resident, I would prefer to know and have these cost estimators who I support, right? I've always thought that was a good idea, to be able to get the whole job done as opposed to get half of it done and then say, oops, now we need another $100,000 in the other floors of the basement because we can't get up there.
What I can do is we can come back to the board with the remaining floors with another number as far as cleaning the remainder of the building at that time if needed. If needed, right.
So I guess that I would also then ask, related to that, you stated that Westerman did a walkthrough, right? Obviously they had the registrars did what the work they were going to do. So I don't understand why this is in addition to what that did was, right? Because when they did the walkthrough, they must have realized that they weren't comfortable going into the building until it was clean. So why wasn't that part of what was originally agreed to, or isn't that part of the project scope?
Judy, this is Ralph Swazi. I don't know if you attend all of these, I think you do rather religiously, but back in August, I think.
That's correct.
We requested that this be cleaned as we started to go into this phase of the cost estimator and St. Paul committee, people wanted to do it, and even the trustee wanted to go in. So the debris is extensive on the first floor specifically. We had a collapse there where they had to bring in new lumber. So I'm not sure what the third and fourth floor look like, but if he can conduct his work with the first and second floors mostly clean, if the third and fourth floors or basement access is restricted or he feels he can't do the work, he'll come back to us and say, we need to get in there, it needs to be cleaned. I think it's, it may be a piecemeal approach, but we're just trying to mitigate risk. We've been put on written notice that this is an issue. We don't let our own people go in there. And we have, I think, a responsibility, financially.
No disagreement about, absolutely no disagreement in doing the work that they're asking for. I'm just trying to understand a little bit more clearly how we got here. And then, actually, just prompted another question. So didn't the mayor have the committee, the mayor's committee on St. Paul's go into the building?
Yes.
We had only a small group.
I had a small group of people with my assistants enter the building, yes.
There were only 3 or 4 members of the committee went in.
And these are design professionals as well.
Right, because my question is that, water is this point, but quite frankly, so we had professionals tell us previous to that visit that it wasn't a good idea to go into the building. We have professionals now tell us that it isn't, and they will not go into the building until we clean it and shore it up. And yet, we asked residents to go into the building, look around, and take some pictures. That makes me very uncomfortable. That's all.
No, just the committee. No residents enter the building, Mayor. Just the
Well, the
committee.
committee is residents.
There were engineers of the committee,
The committee is design professionals that are only looking for the consideration of the building, and they're well alert. And in addition to that, everybody that entered the building has to sign a waiver form notifying and understanding that they must take precaution before entering the building, have proper PPE, and safe precautions as far as that. And I assisted everybody that walked into that building. They were never unsupervised,
Thank you.
including the fire chief as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
Yes, we have 2 more. Dennis Siriano, would you like to go next?
Hi, I would love to. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Well, first and foremost, thank you. Good evening. And thank you all for addressing local new plans. I know that a lot of residents in town are very concerned about that. It's really reassuring to hear that there's already an investigation and considerations underway as to what areas may or may not be at risk. So again, thank you. I was one of, if not probably the most vocal resident this week in regards to the installation of the alleged fiber optics into the ground. Back with the quick background is I pulled into my driveway in the morning, I think it was yesterday, and there was work being done on the lawn between my sidewalk and the street on the grass. It looked like nothing work, but because I was not notified, nor was my husband notified of any work that was being done, I approached the workers, the Altice workers, and just asked them what they were doing. I received several different answers, which prompted me to reach out to the town. Many of you have responded to me, which I appreciate, and are working to get concrete answers. I also did get a call from a director of Optimum last night saying that they would, in writing, confirm what was happening. I have not received that just yet. If and when I do, I will be sure to send that to the board. However, my ultimate concern is, even if this is fiber optics, I believe that the boxes that the fiber optics connect to still do emit radiation, and I do not know how much. There are several units installed into my ground. I'm a child, that's very dangerous for infants, and I think we just need more clarity around what is being omitted into our environment from this company. I know that this is being worked on, but again, I just want to reiterate the vagueness is not, in my opinion, sufficient, and as taxpayers and just people, we should know if we are at risk for, incremental radiation when we already live in a highly cancerous area. And that is all.
Mrs. Siriano, this is Mayor Cosmo of Nizali. Fiber optics typically don't have what we call electromagnetic radiation. So again, I would be very surprised if you should be concerned about that. However, we would have the company check that out carefully, Ralph. If they are putting any high tension wires as part of the installation, we should know that. Fiber optics typically are communication lines. They don't carry high voltage. So we should be very careful what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what connection they're making to the homes. I've been involved in high tension wire installations in my profession, and one of the best ways to monitor this is to hire industrial hygienists. that will monitor the amount of magnetic radiation that comes from these cables. And then you'll know if you have a serious issue or not.
So, Mrs. Seriano, I spoke to you, I think yesterday, the day before, whenever you called, I spoke to you about this. I immediately contacted our liaison, and he told me he was gonna have someone call you, which I was very happy to hear, but I really don't want him having to do that 6,500 plus times. We've asked him to put out a blanket communication to educate everyone simultaneously. I've been assured it is only light traveling down these cables, but I'm not an engineer and I didn't design the project. The mayor, I will do my best, but as Mr. Fishberg and I said earlier in this meeting, we have sent emails, we've made calls, we have researched the agreements. They have not been very communicative, which is exactly Mrs. Seriano's point, and Mrs. Timmons and all the other people who have called me. It's aggravating and frustrating to have to sit here and oversee not oversee a process. We have no permitting capability. The only thing I can do is send the police up there and send the workers out of town, and that is a step I've not taken because I don't know the legal ramifications of that. I have alluded to that in my last communication with them. Mr. Fishberg has done similar. I will try to get this resolved as best I can.
Absolutely, I think ultimately, if we can just get communications from them and the communications saying that what our observations are in regards to not emitting radiation, they are correct, that would be, be sufficient, right? Just obtaining that, because I think ultimately the next concern is if they're doing that, we won't even confirm. If they're doing this and they won't even confirm increased radiation, what's in the next 2, 3, 4 years as technology, advances, what else is going into the ground. So if the president has said that whenever there's changes made, they have to communicate that in a written format that we can reference, I think that we'll be setting ourselves up for a many more well-slept nights, if you will. But thank you all for your work on this. It's much appreciated, and hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
The irony is they're a communication company and they're very poor at it.
Yeah, and it's not
Bob Oros?
Yes, good evening, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, good evening. Again, I'd like to express my happy to everyone. I'd like to go back and make a comment about the cleaning of St. Paul's. I realize they're going to be going in and removing the construction debris and so on, but are they able to address the hazardous materials that inundate the building, which the lead paint, the lead in the air, mold, and so on? Or are you going to be waiting when the abatement is done? And will Weston include the cost of abatement into their estimate?
So that the part of their removal process and the cleaning, no, it does not involve as far as the lead paint and any asbestos throughout the building. There is some asbestos on some of the pipes and some lead paint in the areas. But this cleaning is not of that nature. It's basically just removing the rubbish and the debris so the engineers and architects can walk a path and explore. That will be dealt with at a different time.
They're going to enter the building pretty much in hazmat, with hazmat mask and so on?
That's not, well, the cleaning service.
The cleaning service, when I talked to him in your office, he indicated they would be using full hazmat.
That's correct. Full hazmat, PPE as needed for this cleaning process. But they will not be abating any of the asbestos or lead paint.
Mr. Oros and members of the public, this building, whether it stays or goes, will have to be cleaned and abated. So this money we're spending is just a down payment on a future spend, no matter which direction we go. It has to be done eventually. So it's not like we can avoid this expense eventually.
No, that's what I'm saying. The fact that the entire building would have to be abated, whether we take it down or leave it or whatever. And I'm asking if Weston is going to include
Yes, he will be including that in his estimate.
I'm sorry, let's be clear on this, because we had a separate proposal by VHB of $90,000 to create a bid specification for putting out a bid spec for remediation of the entire building, which was never executed by the former board.
Right.
My understanding is Westerman is estimating facadism, adaptive reuse, and demolition. Please be careful. I'm not sure if that contract includes an abatement cost, bid specification. I don't know. I thought it was just to do the structural questions.
Okay. Well, we will clarify that with Mr. Westman in our meeting.
Just don't state it in front of me tonight, because I don't think it's included.
Okay, that's something we can bring up with Mr. Westerman.
Well, when I looked it up, as far as remediation or abatement of mold in the building, that could be quite expensive. In fact, the estimates are anywhere from about $15 to about $32 a square foot to eliminate mold in the building. And the building that size, that could be in the millions. So I hope they get their act together and their cost estimate correct.
3 or 4 years ago, when we were contemplating the stabilization project, there was a next phase which included remediation, and we ballparked the number of $2 million at the time, based on nothing, because we never had the VHB analysis done or the bid spec done. So we expect it to be very high.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, Karen? Please come up.
Good evening, I'm Mary Timmons, 6 Linden Street, and the only times I've ever spoken at this podium have involved RF radiation from cell antennas. That is because about 11 years ago I came home from vacation, a little bit jet lagged, and I saw something in my backyard, didn't know what it was. Fast forward, it was a cell antenna. It was owned by Metro PCS, who had since been bought by T-Mobile, and they were running a company in my backyard. The board at the time was very aware of this. We didn't get any support. In fact, a letter had been sent to the companies involved that they were happy that they chose to go into the backyards, except that the board never told the people. So I ask you, I appreciate the transparency you've shown thus far, and I'd love for that to continue because it really affected thousands of hours of work amongst residents. I will fast forward and tell you that there was no permit for the opening of the street to allow for that unit to go into our yard. There are 11 antennas still in Garden City. I'm sorry, 10 or 11. Our antenna has been removed. And it was removed on the basis that there was no permit, which is what we asked the board for help at the time, didn't get. So now I'm going to fast forward to today. There was in MIT's Technology Review Insights report, I'm just going to quote this, responsible technology is about exploring and considering the values, unintended consequences, and negative impacts of the tech we create and deploy in actively managing and mitigating the risks for harm. That's Dr. Rebecca Parsons stating that. They're becoming more open and aware that we have to watch what we're doing. When you go from 4G and you cross over into 5G, you are going up the spectrum. You're leaving the MRI microwave, which is what we have in Garden City, and you are moving on towards x-rays and CAT scans, okay? So I feel for Danetta, I think I'm saying her name correctly, and with her, upcoming delivery of a baby, I want to tell you that close to the home of people with the antenna, just in one area, we have 1 to 2 cases of known epilepsy now. We have a salivary gland tumor, and we have a thyroid tumor. So this is not to be fooled around with. We need to take it seriously, and I feel like we're not. We're not because it's something we don't know about.
And I don't know if you go to the town of Hempstead, they hire Municipal Solutions. What is it? The Center for Municipal Solutions. Dr. Dick Comey comes in, he evaluates, he says, you know what? You don't have to go close to a home, do this. You don't need 15 antennas, you could do it with 3. So we're not doing anything like that. Now, whether we pay taxes to the town of Hempstead and let them have oversight, or we do it ourselves the right way, I have an RF meter here that I purchased. I can go through different parts of Garden City and it's 0, 0, 0. I go to other parts, and I'll just give an example and say down here on the corner of CVS and whatever's over there, and it's beeping and high and all the time. So I think we have to recognize the dangers. 3 or 4 minutes, and it's late at night, I don't want to take up everybody's time, but I think we have to become more responsible for technology. There's a lot of help out there, there's a lot of support. We have to update our telecom law, and we can do that by simply going to one source that already has it online and fixing ours to match it, in an attempt to stave off 5G and 6G being close to our homes. Thank you, have a good night.
I take it very seriously, because I've done this for my clients. I know what you're talking about. Electromagnetic radiation is really dangerous. It does cause cancer, it causes brain cancer. Been documented in schools in Connecticut where children next to high voltage lines have cancer, right? So again, the solution is really to have a consultant who specializes in this. As I mentioned before, industrial hygienists are the kind of people that do this kind of research and testing. And I would recommend to the board and to Mr. Swazi to get a couple of the consultants, get their proposals, and make sure that these areas are safe, especially when you're saying we have multiple cell towers, right? That's of concern.
I want to say that right across from Stewart School, there's an old, I think it was maybe used as, looks like a lookout tower to me, or a something. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. But it's so busy over there, you don't look up. And when you do look up, and you see that thing is coated with cell antennas right across from the school, and that T-Mobile Metro PCS I was telling you about, there's an antenna 5 houses away from Stratford School in a backyard, and right on, I'm not from that area, but it's right behind the soccer field of Stratford School. There's one in that backyard. That person didn't even know it went in. I said, you have a cell antenna in your yard. They're like, no, I don't. I said, yes, you do. And we went back there and went through his shrubbery, and they hid it right in there with a 4-foot equipment box, and he didn't even know it. So yes, I would love to help you on that. You can reach out. I have a lot of information. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Please send it to Ralph Swazi.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Mary, I'm familiar with what you went through. Your perseverance to fix your situation was unbelievable. And I know it took you years, if I remember. And your advocacy to get this done and help support us in, accomplishing what we need to do is very much appreciated.
Thank you. Any other comments, Karen?
Yes, this
Is it on Zoom?
yes,
Yes, on Zoom.
Go ahead, Mr. Bassler.
Yes, just good evening, everyone. Robert Gasolati, 32 Brixton. And thank you for bringing up the idea of cleaning St. Paul. I think it's way overdue, so people can work effectively there. So I support that effort, and again, overdue. But as everyone was talking, and while it's fresh in people's minds, I was looking at the Westerman RFP and their response, and there are several short paragraphs in there that point to abatement and offering estimates on that. So there's about 3 paragraphs in their estimate responding to that, and so that I believe it will be included, and it looks like it's pretty solid in their response. That's all I wanted to add on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Let's continue. I'd like to get approval of the minutes of the previous Board of Trustees meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the December 15, 2022 meeting?
I'll make a motion, we approve.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Let's go to the new business form agenda. Trustee Kelly, there was an item on the December 15 Board of Trustees meeting. Did you want to make a motion to defer that item? Would you like to address this item again?
Yeah, I've looked at a lot of the documents
relating to this. And what I don't understand is there was a written proposal by LKMA on December 7th, which totaled $2,500. A week later, the board deferred action on this proposal. So I don't understand how anything could have been done, and the agenda item speaks in the future tense to prepare photo renderings that depict a widening, and I certainly don't want photo renderings that depict a widening. This was never presented to the Traffic Commission, and the Traffic Commission in its satellite traffic calming study is actually looking at narrowing roadways, not widening them, and putting in traffic calming devices on streets that are lacking them and lacking protections like Wetherill Road and like the eastbound parking areas on Stewart from Franklin to Washington. And so if no work has been done, I don't want any work to be done, and I would oppose this item. Neither the Traffic Commission nor I are interested in widening any roadways in Garden City. As many people have commented, it's sort of a field of dreams thing. If we build it, they will come. And we don't want to keep widening roadways. And certainly Stewart from Franklin to Clinton is our roadway. And we're currently evaluating in the Traffic Commission why it needs to be 6 lanes and whether traffic calming devices should be used to reduce the width of the roadway so that it has 2 standard lanes until it starts to approach traffic signals and needs another lane. So that's my position on it. I haven't seen that the work has been done. This agenda item doesn't suggest it has been done. And although it speaks of ratification, it's really approval that is requested because no prior board action was taken on this item. And so at this point, I continue to oppose it, and I will oppose the expenditure of any taxpayer funds to consider widening roadways in the village that are under the village's control.
I have a question. Has this work been done?
Yes, been done. I sent it to the board. I'm sorry. I had images at the last meeting, rendering was done. I can't comment on the date of the proposal. It might be more, they sent it out, but I authorized the work. And it was done, and the renderings were sent in an email to the board either late last week or early this week. I want to repeat though, we're not widening Stewart. It's just that it was, the engineers pointed out the state requirements that this could be an alteration on maintenance item, and I did it as a precautionary thing for the conversation. We have not designed a widened Stewart Avenue.
In the documentation that I reviewed, that there are emails going back and forth back in June of 2022. Attached to the reports are in fact the renderings that were annexed to it. And my understanding is that the only action by the board is to pay the bill for what the work was. I concur that no further work or any further work with regard to Stewart Avenue should be done. However, I am in support of paying the bill that was for work that was incurred and supplied to us. Notwithstanding, that there was a miscommunication with regard to whether this had to be put as a board action or whether it had to be done simply under the general rules of authority of the village administrator to go forward with the item. Since the work has been done, I concur that it should be paid, but that no further work in any regard with regard to Stewart Avenue should be done unless and until the Traffic Commission passes on it and makes a recommendation.
Can I just make a comment there? I appreciate your request, Trustee Trino, and it's fine, but every road we design is basically pedestrian sidewalks, aprons and curbs and ADA ramps that, and the drainage. So to repave Stewart, we have to do the basic work. If we're going to rebuild it the way it is, we still have to do design work, so do no other work. You know, paving the roads is a board decision and a budgetary decision, and we're not altering traffic or signage or anything. We're repairing and rebuilding the curbs and sidewalks. So we have to bring the entire road program to the Traffic Commission, but that's not really going to be helpful for the process, and it's not really, I don't think, on the jurisdiction of the Traffic Commission. But whatever the board wants, we'll do. We're just paving roads, and we still need to design, you know, the linear footage and the concrete and all that work. That's what it was for that the board approved. The widening was a question that popped up, had nothing to do with our intentions.
So, now, if I want to be clear about something, are you getting any state money? Are you getting state funding or money?
We get the Community Highway Improvement Program funds, CHIPS, and so, for instance, when we do a road, and you're all familiar with the gray pads, the rubber pads, that's required. If we do a road and we're getting CHIPS funding, we have to show photographs for that work, that we did it. Otherwise, they will not give us the funds. So,
But I'm saying, are you entitled to funding for Stewart Avenue?
it's afterward, when we do the roads first, and then we apply for the CHIPS funding. And I'm not sure the reimbursement model, but it might be based on linear feet or something like that.
I agree with President Torino. I think we pay the bill, move on, not do any work in terms of widening the road.
We're not going to widen the roads, so we have identified it as a repaving project. That means milling down the asphalt, repairing damaged curbs, fixing the sidewalks that are trip hazards, which are a liability to the village, and repairing any aprons that are part of the curbs. This is normal DPW road paving 101. The widening is not on the radar screen, and it's not, but we just can't discontinue working on our road program. If you want to have Stewart specifically.
I understand. So I asked the board, do we vote on this? Do we vote on making payment of the bill and not doing any more work? What does the board want to do?
I'm in agreement with that. I mean, the work's been done, we have to pay for it now,
Yes.
but I think there's a clear consensus here that no one's interested in widening Stewart Avenue.
Right. So it's on the consent calendar as a payment?
No, it's not on the
agenda has to
consent.
go first. The formal agenda, we have to go first. So I make a motion that we approve item number 1 on the third formal agenda.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
No.
So for trustee Phil.
I'm actually going to ask that number 10 be removed for discussion, though there's been some discussion already from the consent calendar.
Okay. Moving on to 10. Do you want to state a reason for that?
Well, we can vote on the rest of the consent calendar and then we discuss it.
I'll make a motion that the balance of the consent calendar, other than item number 10, be approved.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye. All right, so on item item number 10, the cleanup services, I don't want to delay the estimation at all. I don't think anybody up here wants to delay it. Some issues, questions have come up that are of concern to me. When this was put on, safety issues that are bigger concerns of everyone. Other issues tonight, we have, and I have been asked, we still haven't had the kickoff meeting with Westerman. And I see that we got an email during the traffic commission meeting just tonight, barely had a chance to look at it, proposing some dates for that meeting where we're gonna hear what they're planning to do. Although the dates were, they're 9 a.m. meetings on work days, so I think we're gonna need, I'm gonna doubt that most of the trustees are available for a 9 a.m. meeting on a work day with a week's notice, so I think we're gonna have to work to come up with a date, or time and date that we can make. I think
The estimate usually works in the morning.
Yes, I requested, I've been asking him for weeks to try to get us a schedule and a date, and he's trying to put together his team, and finally got back to me this afternoon with a couple of dates. Unfortunately, they work 9 to 5, so that's requested 9 o'clock a.m. on those 2 dates to speak to the board as far as how they're gonna
It
proceed.
would be an hour, maybe.
It's probably gonna be an hour, I would say, at the very
I'm
most.
available both those days.
At the very most. If you'd like me to request different days, then just, let me know, but those are the days that he requested that he can be here with us.
So you sent it out today, you said?
I did, this afternoon, actually,
So that's-
after I heard back from him.
The board will get back to you, and hopefully they'll approve on some of those dates.
So I think it's important that we have a meeting we can attend with Westerman. The other thing that concerns me is coming up tonight, hearing that you're not sure of the scope of the work yourself and whether the estimate's going to include the full cost. I think that's concerning to me and probably to others. As far as the cleanup, I'm concerned as far as what exactly needs to be cleaned up and are we doing everything we should be doing. I did reach out to council, and I don't know if council has everything now to review, but my concerns are, I think we all need to be aware of what work is being done in the building, who's going in the building, insurance issues, liability issues. I just heard tonight, actually, the attachment to the agenda, as far as I could see, is 1 page. It's a proposal from August 31st of 2022, so I don't think that's even in response to Westerman's concerns. I don't think we're clear on what Westerman's specific concerns are right now.
I brought this, excuse me, Mr. Trustee, I brought this to the board back in August, way before he requested this. I brought it to the board's attention that I feel, as superintendent, the building should be cleaned prior to bringing anybody into the building, to be honest with you. So, the village right now is on notice. We can defer to council, but we are on notice, and we have a liability issue with me bringing people into the building. So I strongly suggest that we do something to make effort into having this building clean before we do anything. I mean, if you ask my personal opinion, I think we should, if this is left over from whiteboards or whatever may have you, there is debris in the building, and I feel that it should be taken care of before we let anybody into the building.
Okay, so just, I hadn't finished it yet, actually. And I just heard tonight that it's actually not even Island-wide Building Services who's doing the work, they're actually subbing it to another business?
They work in conjunction with a subcontractor, which is a demo contractor actually, which is gonna take away the debris and rubbish that was left behind.
So I'll just ask council what you've reviewed as far as the contracts for work being done at St. Paul's, who's going in the building, and if you've had a chance to review that.
I've asked to see the contracts, I haven't seen.
I mean, as far as caution, I think I agree, no one should be going into the building now with the information we have. I think we need to get the documents to our council. I think we need to hear from Westerman what exactly the job is they're doing, where they're going in the building. I think our council will need to know that too, to give us advice on this. I think there are some very serious issues here, and I don't think we should do it halfway, off the cuff. I think it's gotta be done deliberately and properly, and that is my only reason for not supporting this. And I do think as far as time frame, we can have a special meeting. When these documents are provided, we get advice of council, we find out what Westerman's going in to do, then we can hold a special meeting to approve funding. I'm not looking to delay this, I don't want to delay this, but I'm not comfortable with the way this is being presented to us for a decision today. And I'm also, I share some concerns as far as the water under the bridge, about people going into the building already, so I think we need to get some advice on this, and our attorney needs to see all the documents to give us proper advice.
The proposal from Westerman describes what he's going to do, correct?
That's correct.
He's not supposed to clean the building, right?
No.
Okay, that's the responsibility of the village.
Correct.
Thank you.
The proposal from Island Wide says that they will provide material, equipment, and insurance to conduct the following scope of work. But I haven't seen what the insurance is.
We have their insurance, counsel. They're actually on state contract, and they're actually cleaning facilities throughout the building currently at this time. So we have their insurance.
So we have a certificate of insurance from them
Correct.
specifying all the different coverages.
That's correct. Before they start, I would have requested insurance be indicated that they're entering St. Paul's, but that has the building that they were actually working on. We can actually depict the location.
And we have that from Westerman as well.
We do, and they all signed waivers entering the building, so I have that document.
They signed a waiver.
That's correct.
Has anything been provided to council as far as the waivers or the Westerman contract and their insurance information?
I hate to do.
So I think we just have a few steps to take.
Do we have a hold harmless that we can put on there?
It's already in their agreement.
It is in the agreement.
You know, come on, you know, this is just.
Well, these are questions you need to
No,
ask.
No, but these questions have already been asked.
Well, not the hold harmless, it hasn't.
If you read the contracts, it's already in there. But notwithstanding, you have a building that has and needs to be cleaned. There are penetrations. So you have a situation where you have the New York State Labor Law sections 200, 241-6, and 240. You also have exposure to the fire department, and the village would be on the hook for anybody who gets injured in the building. The procrastination in not cleaning the building is unconscionable when you know, in fact, that it has to go and be cleaned at some point in time, sooner versus later. In the event that you have an individual, Jack and Jill, decide to go up the hill and go inside the building, even if you have a person who trespasses, if they fall through any of the penetrations in the building or get injured, that's a liability on the part of the building, on the part of the village, and the village has a deductible of $250,000 that it would be on the hook for. Approval of item number 10 would obviously be consistent with the building practices of having the hold harmless and indemnifications as was set forth in the RFP that went out. So, quite candidly, this is what I do for a living. Negligence cases, construction accidents, and the delay is not our friend. We have all the protections that would be necessary for them to go forward in order to start the process.
And everything I've read and understand, you're accurate. To push back on getting the first 2 floors not passed tonight puts a delay in the whole process where we are covered for now on those 2 floors. In addition, the police department is not authorized to go in the building. Should there be somebody who does get hurt in the building, they're allowed to use blowhorns. That's it, correct, Commissioner?
We use microphones.
Microphones, okay.
I mean, we would have to call in like emergency services to some other unit.
Yeah, and the police department also doesn't have the equipment to go in. The fire department does, but they'd have to assess the situation to see if it's safe enough to go in and put out a fire. So I think it's a no-brainer that we move ahead on this, and in parallel, we look at what needs to be done in the other parts of the building, but we get things moving. And we're covered insurance-wise, we're covered from what I understand, you know, we're covered in all the things you...
Except for the deductible.
Yeah, except the deductible, yeah. So I'm in favor of putting it back on the agenda and voting on it.
So a couple of questions. So did we know that this needed to be cleaned? I mean, Cosmo, your experience, did we know the building needed to be cleaned before we engaged Westerman? In your experience,
That the building needs to be cleaned?
did you know ahead of time?
I know ahead of time?
Yeah.
I know it had to be.
Did it need to be cleaned, is the question.
This was on the agenda, it's back in August.
No, but Bruce, the agenda item was proposed in August did not, it was more of a, hey, we're gonna clean the building. Okay, it was never tied to us bringing in Westerman, it was never identified as such, okay? So the question I have is if we approved $59,000, okay, to do the cost estimator, yet 59 is now turned to 59 into 48, plus $48,000, right? And on top of that, you know, as Giuseppe is opined, there's gonna be additional costs associated with the upper floors. And what I don't want this to turn into is a black hole of 48 turns into another 48, turns into another 48. So we need to do this with open eyes as far as we're at now. The other question I have, to your point about penetrations, does any of this contemplate closing the penetration? Because as far as I'm concerned, and as I said to Gary, having a hole in the floor and someone falling through a hole is a lot bigger of a concern here to me than someone tripping over a bag of garbage that was left.
Well, I think he has $5,000 here to create a safety barrier, right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
There's additional $5,000 for safeguarding most of those areas.
And what are we gonna do with that $5,000 roughly?
We're gonna do,
What do we contemplate we're gonna buy with the $5,000?
whatever we feel that the need that I investigate as far as putting plywood, 2x4s, to create some kind of barricade or railing. Because right now, you can actually fall into the floor beneath you.
So your guys are gonna do that work?
Would explore it in-house. If not, that would have to get another price to do that.
Okay, so we should know that as well, because now the numbers are getting silly. Because if you're now telling me that, first of all, we don't have a full estimate for the full building, even if we have to do the full building. Second part, we'd like to talk to, when we talk to Westerman, what do they specifically need? Because when I look at this, and again, I know there's a term of reference here, but the concept of vacuuming the floors kind of amazes me, that we're contemplating vacuuming a building that's 30 years old. So it would be very good to understand a couple things. Number one, what exactly, not what we theorized in August, but what specifically does Westerman need us to do to the building? I think the liability aspect to us is paramount, meaning we cover up the holes, we put up your barricades, if you guys can do it. If you can't, we need to know the additional cost of hiring someone else to bring it in. Next part, let's not commit about the 2 floors. If it's gonna be the 4 floors plus the basement, let's get the number for all 5, okay? Because it's best if we have that and the village knows the total number we're talking about, and we're not coming back with additional asks for things that we should have known ahead of time. And at the same time, to Cosmo, question to Cosmo, it does feel right now that we've known for a long time that this should have been part of this proposal, that we should have known this ahead of time. So when we actually did the approval for Westerman, we should have, and to your point, they've already walked through the building. So we should have known what they were asking for, their minimal ask, and added that on top of whatever their estimate was. So I'm not in support of this right now, because this is a black hole that we're going into.
I'm really not sure what else you want me to say, but Mayor, no comment.
Your comment about tripping over a bag ignores 241-6 and the industrial code published by the state of New York. So the answer, in my mind, is if you have a condition that needs to be remediated, that we should vote on this aspect, go ahead with it. We don't necessarily know if the rest of the building has to be cleaned for Westerman or not. Looking at the photographs that have been put out, they should be able to do possibly all of their work on the upper floors, because most of the debris that I see and the penetrations are only on 1 and 2. So, yes, would we like to have all the information possible? Well, we've been dancing around this since August. You and I are both on the liaison committee. These questions are now only coming up now. So, candidly, the rationale expressed for not going forward with item number 10, I don't subscribe to.
I just, on the safety issue, you've been on the third and fourth floor, it doesn't make sense to me why you don't know what the ask is for cleaning the other floors. They're about to start this project, it's a 70-day, I believe, we're told the clock's already running on 70 days, so it just doesn't add up.
Well, the first and second floor does add up, I'll tell you why, because the bigger bags of debris on the first and second floor. As you go up, the building's less. Throughout the building, there's pigeon guano. There's pigeon guano all over the place. So again, I walked into the building, I signed the release, I stepped in the guano, right? It's all over the place.
I've been in the building probably 10 times.
Okay, so again.
So I know a little bit about the building.
Right, so again, there's this material all over the place, we just want to be safe. The areas that were collapsed do have to be cordoned off, right, to protect it so nobody else falls.
That's correct.
So again, the $5,000 estimate, I think is really reasonable.
The $5,000 estimate, Mayor, is my supervision. Hopefully we can do it in-house to safeguard some of the areas. Right now, the building is liable. That's all I have to say. And so.
I would add, Mary raises excellent points, as does Larry. Having said that, on the liability side, I'm erring on the side of we have to take care of this, but we need to know, to their point, what's happening next, because you can't keep going back and say,
Well,
you know, 7,
Let me
3.
explain a little bit further, and I don't want to move to the estimate now because I haven't discussed it yet. When, for example, if you find typical conditions on the first and second floor, they can apply those conditions to the upper floors. So I think that's his thinking. I'm not sure, but I think that's the way you approach it. So for example, if there's a special structural detail on the first floor, you'll probably multiply it out and say, okay, you need it on the other floors. So again, he would give us a list of a menu, how we would structure the estimate, and I think that's the way we approach it. So the first and second floors are really chock-a-block full. The cellar has a tremendous amount of material in it. That is also asbestos. So that's even more concern. But again, that area, I'm not even so concerned about that area because all the mechanical equipment is going to be removed, right? He does it on a square foot basis. You know, so I think he can do it without even going to the third or fourth floor. That's my opinion.
Just to piggyback your comment, as far as not doing anything on the basement does have some of the asbestos. That's why I wanted to actually touching the debris in the basement this time. And some of the other floors may have additional lead paint. So I'm concentrating on the first and second floor right now because that's really the bulk of the debris.
And I think you should also add that you did some air monitoring.
We did.
You did air monitoring to make sure that we went in there, we were safe. So
right.
I was wearing a respirator. I think some of you remember wearing respirators, right? Again,
we had monitored
the precautions necessary.
You can actually enter the building.
I don't think people in the village that work in the village, or firefighters or police officers, should be allowed in the building unless we have this building safe.
By the way, the reason to vacuum the building is to prevent it from going airborne.
Right.
So if you sweep a building, you're gonna wind up having particulate all over the place. It is.
If you look at their proposal, they're going to obtain all the OSHA requirements as well. So proper PPE, all OSHA requirements. So it is going to be monitored. It's not. We're not having anybody come in.
Having seen the building, both of you, the third and fourth floor, once we get to where we're going to have to clean them, would you think that their estimate would be less to do the additional floors if there's not as much debris on the third and fourth floor?
I think it's a very good point because once the cleaning company goes in and sees the amount of work we need to do, they'll see there's less bags of material on the upper floors.
That's the intention. The intention is once they get in and see, then we can figure out if we have to go back and do the other floors.
Okay.
The building is pretty much a typical cookie cutter building. Once they review one section of the building, it's pretty standard.
Yeah. The only areas of concern for me are that those areas that have collapsed because of the water filtration, those areas are dangerous. I was told not to walk within 3 feet of those areas because the flooring is very soft. So we want to make sure nobody goes through that floor.
I think that I agree with Trustee Deegan that from a liability issue, we've got to move ahead with this immediately. And then in parallel, which I was talking about earlier, that we look to see if we do indeed, because I'm not hearing clearly whether we have to rehab 3 and 4 yet, but we can look into it in parallel and find out what, if anything, needs to be done in order to get the estimator's pricing. Does that sound fair enough?
I agree with you. I mean,
like I said, the other areas, once we get in and explore, maybe Weston will say, I'm good, we don't need anything else. Let's leave that to him. He sent the email out, I rapidly sent it right to you guys because I could. This is the request, it's coming from a third party.
His superintendent,
He did, he walked in the superintendent, and he actually.
The superintendent, I'm fine.
So how much effort do you think it is for them to do the basement, the third and the fourth floor, and come back with what needs to be done, and it costs? If it's not a lot of work, it should be easy.
There's quite a bit of debris in the basement, but I really don't want to
entertain the basement because there was asbestos in the basement, so leave that in. That's a different contract, that's an abatement contract, and I really don't want to go that far because it can get costly.
So then,
We don't need to do that.
and then the cost estimate we're gonna get is an incomplete cost estimate that doesn't contemplate the basement?
No, that's not true. What
And what-
I'm saying is,
then-
that
then how does it work?
the seller, right, he can just say, he has a certain amount of asbestos, he do an area takeoff, he knows what the cost of abatement will be. So he doesn't have to remove it. You don't have to have a person remove the asbestos exactly. They just do an analysis, saying how many square feet is in the cellar, and they have a number per square foot for abatement, and that's how they do it. They multiply it out.
But is the abatement's only a portion of what they're doing, right?
Abatement is just one line item, it's one scope of work.
So, but they will be able to do the other portions of their
Yes.
cost estimate without going down to the basement?
I don't know if they may have to go down and take a look, of course.
Yeah, they've been down to the basement, yes, they have been down to the basement, and they've looked at the
They're
areas.
photographs.
Yeah.
You know, it's all liability that's being mentioned, and we have village council here, so I don't know if you wanna, make any statement based on what you've seen. I think the thought here is that this cleaning of 1 and 2 is gonna go on, and people will continue to go in the building.
Well, and from a liability point of view, I think it's wise to reduce your liability as well as you can, and doing this work will certainly reduce liability. It may not completely abate any liability, but it'll certainly reduce the liability. And I think that's an admirable thing to do.
In that regard, I move that we approve item number 10.
Well, then we vote separate. We already approved the consent calendar.
No. We're only addressing item number 10.
So we have a vote?
I'm voting in favor of approving item 10.
I second.
So we have 4.
5.
Thank you. We're moving on to non-agenda items now. And it's 10:05.
This will take me 10:07. Ed Finner and 301 Franklin. Two quick items. Number one is a comment. Mayor, as your team puts together an assessment of those properties near railroads, that certainly would be under Hochul's dream of building some of the 800,000 new homes that she wants to. I think that's admirable. The number one, undoubtedly, area in this village is at the cathedral.
Yes.
All right, so, I mean, it's front and center. There's nothing more attractive. Number two.
There's another attractive one on Stewart Manor Station. There's a perfect site for a 6-story apartment building.
That very well could be true, but I would argue that.
No, that is, you're right.
That the property at the
There are other sites as
cathedral.
well, but it's just
Yeah, the
fine.
cathedral property is by far the most valuable. And then number two, I noted with interest, as I'm sure everyone on the board did, the article in Newsday today about the potential development over at Nassau Coliseum. Was wondering, and I know that there have been some touch points by Las Vegas Sands to folks in the village, including the Board of Education. And I was wondering whether or not this board is going to have a position on what's going on over there and how they intend to investigate that.
Definitely investigate for sure. You definitely have to get involved and understand what's happening. It's serious. You know, I think the suburbs are under attack right now.
Truly,
That's what's happening.
All right, well, good, because that is obviously very important, especially to the folks in the east, where you'll see an explosion of traffic, which of course Trustee Kelly will note of interest.
Thank you. Please come up. The non-agenda items. All right, okay, you can come back. Go ahead. Slip of pen.
Leo Stimler, 67 Arlington Road. Mr. Mayor, I commend you formed a committee about the governor's State of the State address, where she wants all this 800,000 units put on in New York, and she wants to focus on Long Island, and she wants to focus on New York City. And the formula, excuse me, the formula she gave was 3%. She wants 3% more homes over 3 years. I hope your committee will look in and ascertain whether the 555 Stewart, would that cover? I don't know if it would.
I'm not sure, but again, the comments I've seen in the press are that they're looking for sites in proximity to railroad stations.
Yes.
Because they're looking to include all types of housing.
Yes, and that was my concern too, but maybe, Mr. Mayor, maybe she'll accept there's all those units. Because if you take 3% of what, I don't know how many homes we have, 7,200, 7,400, that's about 225 homes. And she wants them in, and the average, the paper said, on Long Island is they put in about a little over half of 1%, and she wants 3%. So putting up 225 homes, or thereabouts, a little more, a little less, and within a half a mile of a railroad station, yes, I hear you about yours, but she could also, what if a developer, what also concerns me, what if a developer comes along and says, okay, I want to put them up behind the library, next to the library, around the library, right there on 6th Street, 7th Street. And she said, don't worry about the local jurisdiction. I'll take care of you up in Albany. So these are the things that concern me. And I hope your committee will say, Governor, what about the electrical power grid? To put up 200 units, will that cover? What about sewers? Do we need new schools or classrooms for that?
There's a multiplier effect.
Yes,
It affects traffic, affects the environment, it affects schools, it affects everything.
Yes,
and the committee, again, will be formed very quickly. They're going to look into this. We're going to try to get as much information as possible, because we want to get involved in the dialogue as fast as possible with other communities that are going to be impacted as us.
Thanks, Mayor. And remember, of course, she can't do it unless the state Senate and the Assembly go along with her. So I hope all of us are in contact with Senator Michael Thomas and Assemblyman Ra, and Thomas, and I hope to hear from all of you who are seeking re-election. I hope to hear from you on your position about the governor's demand that we build all this housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Senator. Anyone else? This is your second time, sir.
I'm sorry, Richard Williams, 411 Street. On that subject of building and we are so vulnerable, as you all know, but what bothers me most is that we are somehow a bifurcated community right now. We have the Board of Education doing something, which we don't know what that is, but we're doing something. We're having a conversation, and we don't know that. It seems to me that one of the first things we might do is with the Board of Trustees, to meet with the Board of Education trustees, and have some kind of dialogue to find out what their interests are, what our interests are, before we do anything. It'd be really kind of foolish if we were at odds with each other, which is a possibility. So,
thank you.
Thank you. Let me just mention that there are different problems with the Board of Education and the village, specifically with regard to funding that is generated by casinos.
Yes.
That is often a driving force.
Follow the money. Yes, sir.
Paul Rothendahl, 216 Kensington Road, Garden City. I want to talk about Maryland Avenue Station. I'd like to follow up what Trustee Chester said and give John Barone a hand in doing a great job there. He was able to control the weather and get all the concrete work still done. It's working out very nicely. But on the negative side, I want to talk a little bit of what took place at the station. And I'd like to show a couple of slides. As part of the agreement that we had, just 2 slides. Part of the agreement that we had in building the tunnel, I'm sorry, am I doing something wrong?
No,
Oh,
you said
okay.
that slide.
Part of the agreement, I thought, to allow the railroad to continue the construction and build the tunnel and everything, we agreed to enhance landscaping plans. And what's happened up to this date with Sweet Hollow along Main Avenue and whatnot has been pretty good. But the enhanced landscaping plan that was promised to us is on the right here. Unfortunately, they just, unfortunately, they terminated Sweet Hollow for the last part of the contract and went out and got a new bid from another contractor. He's not following the enhanced landscaping plans. Those are supposed to be the arborvitaes on the left-hand side, are supposed to be fluffy arborvitaes, and they're not. They're never gonna reach this height. I'm really concerned because 3TC doesn't follow through on their word. We agreed to the original drawing of what it was going to be, and they're charging us extra. They want to charge us extra for plants that we never asked for. They've substituted plants in here again. There's plants that we never asked for.
I don't know about this, Ralph. Do you have any accounting on this? I have no idea. Sweet Hollow was fired?
I don't know for that for fact.
Well, that's what the owner says.
Oh, the owner says. Okay, okay. I spoke to Mr. Pascal about the plantings. He was only available for a minute, and I said, listen, we had some drawings of plantings that were agreed to, and the stuff that's planted up there wouldn't hide a frog. Can we talk about this? He said that he'd review it tomorrow morning. He said he doesn't believe that the enhanced diagram that Mr. Rothwell has up there was received by this new group HTC. So they might be acting on their own.
No, they're working on the same drawings, but that's what HTC.
From a rendering, you have to have a plan. But as a plant list, you can't plant based on a rendering.
So I'll try to square that with Mr. Pascal.
Yeah, we need a technical drawing.
If Ryan, can you show some of the next, there's a slide that has 3 shots on it. It's being kind of dramatic, but it's really a shame. And I need somebody's attention. Ralph told me, and Mr. Swazi told me that we'll worry about it in the spring, and I don't want to worry about it in the spring. I want to tell him now that what he did is wrong. I don't want to live with this and say you have to live with it.
Well, Paul, with all due respect, you can't tell him anything.
I can't tell him anything, that's why I'm here.
The village administrator has to tell
I'm here.
him, not you.
He knows that.
Okay, let's make, you
The other 3 slides that were on there? Yeah, the next one actually, this is a 12-inch hydrangea that they planted. Okay? I mean, I'm serious, that's planted.
Why are they planting now? I don't understand. Why are they planting now?
I'm told that
The planting season.
the Sweet Hollow could not get the product. Sweet Hollow the farm was shut down. They went to HTC, who gave them a better price, and they got whatever garbage was laying around at the
Okay,
landscape
Paul,
place.
Ralph, please get to the bottom of this. I need facts.
This might be more of a Tofano discussion because they're the ones that hired these guys, and there was a plan, and they should stand by that, so I'll talk to
There's a
them.
plan that's been approved, for enhanced landscaping. That's the plan that should follow.
Yeah. This is of interest to you, Mayor, because one of the things that you didn't want was the sprayed grass. This is what they just did on the side of
We told
Nassau.
them not to do that, okay?
Nassau Road. They
They
put
just
the
did that
sprayed
now?
grass instead of sod.
Well, Paul, nobody should be planting now. This is not a planting season. Planting starts in March or April, not now.
We agree.
Okay, this is January, and it's still cold. It makes no sense. I don't know what's going on, Ralph. Someone has to inform me better.
I talked to Henry, who works with 3TC, yesterday. And my understanding from that conversation, it was not an extensive one. I was asking about the plantings, and he says they're trying to get out of Maryland Avenue and trying to finish up all these loose ends. So while we might not agree with what they're doing, the reason I told Mr. Rothenberg we'll do it in the spring is because at that time we have to landscape, and I can't stop them from
My
doing it.
understanding was the planting season begins in the spring, it's going to be resumed. Then they finish all their work in Maryland Avenue. They'll be done, right?
Yes.
So they have to go through one more season. That's what the deal is.
Right, but the thing is that they're planting on their property right now.
That's the right way, I understand.
I can't really prevent that. My understanding was, the way we talked about this is in the spring, I would like the board to hire a landscape architect, since we lost our volunteer, and plan what we're gonna put in those islands. And then we can approach the railroad about their property if we don't agree with what they did, or if we can't
No,
get.
we signed off on enhanced landscaping drawings, and the contractor has the enhanced landscaping drawings. They're LSP 1, 2, and 3. He has those, Sweet Hollow has them, and he's not following them.
Okay, so we'll make sure we follow.
So we'll challenge that and we'll follow it.
Absolutely.
And then we also have the planting beds that we're building in front of their property, which is on our road, that we have to decide as well.
That's our responsibility. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for bringing this to our attention, Paul. I think addressing it immediately is important.
I mean,
I'll remind Mr. Tefano when I speak to him.
all right, I mean, that brings up another subject that I don't mean to be snotty or whatever, but I talked to Mr. Swazi today, and it's almost like groundhog. We're gonna talk to the railroad and the MTA 2 months ago. Last month's meeting, we're gonna talk to the MTA and the railroad. And now, I'm sure you can tell me tonight you're gonna talk to the MTA and the railroad, but when is it gonna happen?
I don't know, Paul, we're trying to set up a meeting with them. They're changing the guard apparently. This is what I was told in end of November. So again, there are people being moved around at the Royal Railroad. I have to make sure we speak to the right people. So
But they still have to
my
follow
call's
their
gonna-
contract, and they still have to follow their agreements.
What?
Regardless of what people they have, they still have to follow their agreements.
I understand, but the contractor takes orders from the railroad, okay?
And along that, we had a memorandum of understanding with the MTA and the Long Island Railroad. And one of the items in there is item 46, says that they will use directional lighting at night to limit light pollution to residences. And yet, we're still talking about paying them to eliminate light pollution.
I'm
Because
assuming
we're talking
that
to
as well.
3TC, we
I'm
really
assuming
should
that
be talking to the MTA, the Long Island Railroad.
Pursuing that as well. Thank you.
When we get that meeting, all of those will be discussed. Get in the meeting.
Please. Take a pick.
Hi, Bill Daly, 196 Roxbury Road. Thank you again very much on the Maryland Avenue project is proceeding despite some of these issues that do need to be addressed with regard to the plantings. Hopefully the village can step up and remediate any issues. Maybe when the spring comes, we'll get to plant on our property. One thing I wanted to mention, it was brought up, and just as it was, I was thinking about this move by the state to use different properties. Just for everyone to be aware, perhaps your committee be aware, several years ago there was a move by the state to look at the drainage, the storm drainage sumps, and kind of reclaim those and use those for housing. So we do have some of those, particularly a large one next to the high school, and other ones around town that perhaps you could also explore to find out what vulnerability that may lie for us, even though they may not be our property. I think it's county property, but perhaps look at that as part of the overall scheme as to how we can better buttress ourselves from some of these initiatives.
Let me address the sump.
Please.
Back when I was trustee, I was assigned recreation, and we, the Recreation Commission, myself, addressed the issue of the sumps. The ones at the high school actually are 4 separate areas, 2 of which are flooded frequently. One is flooded every now and then, and the one that I got an agreement with Nassau County to have the high school to use was not flooded. The problem with using the sumps for housing is the remediation you're gonna have to use to put anything on that ground, and whether you're gonna put the housing on pylons, on posts, or whatever else, because they are all below ground. So I think that the sumps that they are likely thinking about are ones that were abandoned and not have any activity. Because I personally would not like to have a house in which there's a pool right next to me with birds.
Understood. Yeah, I'm just pointing it out as being perhaps something to explore, as we look at the totality of potential exposure.
Oh, I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
Long time no see.
Steve Elordi, 139 Meadow. Can you give us the update on the payment from the community fund for the work that's going on at Main Avenue, the 1.6 million, I think it was, or 1.2?
Well, that's what we're trying to get a meeting to get resolved, Steve. And it's been frustrating, but that's what we've been trying to do. That's all I can tell you. I wish I had an update, but I don't.
And I know the Garden City Casino lease was mentioned earlier, and I believe it was mentioned at the last meeting about flood mitigation project going on over there possibly.
Yeah.
Can you give an update on what projects are in the pipeline for that facility and maybe some timing?
So, the casino, first of all, there was a sewer line break that was just repaired, which was not on anyone's radar, but the utility PSEG stepped up to the plate that that's repaired, thank God, so they could reuse their facility. There were 3 projects contemplated at the time the board was considering the new agreement. While they're not, I don't think, called out directly in the agreement as with timelines, the 3 projects identified by the building department was a roof project. I believe the existing roof might have 2 layers now, some soft spots. There was a drainage issue around the foundation that had gotten into the foundation past, so we had to put some drainage structures in. And then they also have additional needs, not directly related to the foundation, but there's some below grade stuff by their tennis courts. And the third thing was the HVAC or boiler mechanical system, right? The boiler system, I understand, they have adequately repaired it to move on. It probably still needs a replacement, but it's not as imminent now. The roof still needs to be replaced, but it's not leaking today. And the drainage, I think, is the first project that they're working on right now. They supplied you with plans, didn't they?
Yes. So we do have a plan that was submitted to the building department. They are seeking bids right now, which they received a few bids, but I think there was way above their budget as far as doing the rear patio and drainage system and some drainage around the building. So the one of the representatives of this casino actually mentioned to me that they're trying to pursue one certain contractor, and they're working with him to try to get a timeline and a cost on doing so. But that is one of the 3 items that I've questioned that should be addressed in that building.
Okay, and the building gets inspected every year and it's safe to use, it gets passed, you do an inspection annually?
We do inspections there as needed. We do have, protocols as far as fire safety and everything else like that that gets looked at, yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience? Anybody on Zoom? Zoom, please.
Yes, I have a comment, Robert Vesselot.
Second time, Robert.
Excuse me?
Your second time.
Yeah, well, before it was on the agenda items.
Got it.
That's how the meeting works. I mean, I'm just about to throw it.
Yes, I know. Keep going.
Yeah. So, no, I would just like to thank the board and also Giuseppe and John for all the work they've done on Merrill Avenue and Main Avenue and getting Pratt moving on this project, and the trustees who've been involved, Paul certainly for his work. We've all been over there numerous times. I'm tired of walking the area, quite frankly. I walk around the area and I run into the ball and he's measuring things and I'm taking pictures and everyone's walking and walking. But I gotta tell you that overall, we are really putting our mark on something here. And I think that it's good that we are putting our mark on something for the future. Don't forget, this is a gateway area to our town. People come off that train and will be coming off that train for years to come. For now, we have to make sure it's safe just for our everyday commuters. And trust me, it's pretty muddy and messy and everything else. We have to do whatever we can to make it safe. But speaking of the plantings, don't forget that in the budgeted items, I saw $50,000 for Leyland Cypress there. And one thing that has been done perfectly well, and I think everyone who's involved in any decisions for landscaping should look at it, is by Meadbrook, where we planted the tall cypress in front of the station, where the station begins by Meadbrook there, and the platform begins and the lighting all begins. Those tall shrubs look spectacular there, and they block the entire platform. This is what we're really going for. That part of it is pretty good on the western end. All of a sudden, it just on Stewart Avenue, Nassau Boulevard, Main Avenue, all over the place. We need a master plan. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bob Moros, who's trying to say something.
Thank you. Next, Karen, on Zoom, anyone else?
Yes, all those.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there's a quick question. I know, I'm over here in the east of 28 Grove. I know Grove Street and Meadow Street are forecast for repaving. Will the repaving also include Lindbergh? Because I go down Lindbergh all the time, and when the pipes were put in, the asphalt, asphalt was put over the pipe, but all that asphalt is sinking below the level of the street, and it's forming also potholes. So I'm wondering whether that's going to be addressed.
Mr. Oros, the paving project scope includes Grove, Lindbergh, Commander, and Meadow, fully.
Okay, good. Good. All right. Because every time I go over there, I sort of have to stay in the middle because I go to the cost, starts tilting to the left or the right because of the unlevel street. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else?
No.
Okay. Make a motion to close the meeting.
I shall move.
All in favor? Thank you, everyone.